All right, we're back from lunch. This is the second half then of our second day of the Wyoming Blockchain Select Committee. This afternoon, we're going to take a look at some artificial intelligence governance related issues, and then hit on just beginning a discussion on right to repair and FTC click to cancel discussion. So we've got a good, interesting slate for the afternoon. And with that, Mr. Co-Chairman, any thoughts before we hit the agenda?
Let's go for it. We've got an exciting day ahead of us.
All right. Let's get started then on our AI governance. And we've got Dazza Greenwood, I believe, on Zoom. Hopefully he's out there. We don't see him yet. All right. Well, we actually started on time, so he might not have anticipated that. What we'll do instead, I think, is start off with a review of our other states' AI governance legislation. I know, Clarissa, you've put together a great piece that is available online as well. You can download it for those listening at home. And please walk us through it. Find my copy.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Clarissa Nord with LSO. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll provide a high-level overview of how states are approaching the governance of artificial intelligence. And this is Appendix 18-01 in your materials. And Mr. Chairman, this memo really emphasizes other states' legislation that aims to promote transparency, protect consumers, and regulate high-risk AI applications. To provide a couple of quick definitions for some background information, as you all are likely aware, AI systems are machine-based technologies that generate predictions, decisions, or outputs that can affect real or virtual environments. And AI governance refers to regulatory frameworks that guide how these systems are developed and used. So for enacted legislation last year, I'll discuss 3 states, California, Colorado, and Utah. They all passed AI legislation last year, and they had a couple of different approaches. California, they enacted transparency requirements for generative AI. So by next year in 2026, developers have to disclose information about the training data sets they use, including whether personal data was used and how it was processed. And this law applies to AI deployed in California since 2022, and it does have some exemptions for national security applications. And then Colorado passed the Consumer Protections for Artificial Intelligence Act. And this law specifically focuses on high-risk AI systems, and they define those as used in employment, housing, healthcare, education, and legal services. And developers are required to maintain documentation about how their systems function, and deployers have to assess for potential discrimination, notify affected individuals, and provide mechanisms for human review and appeal. And then Utah, their approach, I covered this last year in our meeting, but they've adopted a more innovative-oriented approach. Their framework requires disclosure when AI is used in regulated professions, and it imposes liability for deceptive or harmful uses that violate consumer protection laws. And then to support responsible development, they established an AI learning lab, and this allows developers to test emerging technologies under temporary regulatory relief and state oversight. And then moving on to introduce legislation this year, New Mexico, they proposed a bill to address algorithmic bias in consequential decisions, again, defining those as affecting housing, education, and legal services, among others. And this bill included requirements for human oversight and consumer notifications. And the bill passed out of committee, but it wasn't enacted before the legislature adjourned. Texas, they also introduced the Responsible AI Governance Act. And this provides responsibilities for developers and deployers, and it specifically restricts the use of unacceptable risk AI systems. And they specifically call out applications like biometric surveillance and social scoring. And then it creates a regulatory sandbox for testing and establishes a state AI policy council. And this bill is currently pending before the legislature. Virginia, they enacted legislation providing monitoring requirements for high-risk AI systems. But it was vetoed by their governor, and he cited concerns about potential adverse effects on innovation and small businesses within the state. So, Mr. Chairman, across these states, there's a couple of themes that are emerging. A number of states are focusing on high-risk AI applications. So this is where systems impact access to essential services or legal rights. They're also focusing on transparency and documentation, so clarifying how AI systems are trained, how they operate, and who is accountable for them. They also have more human oversight and appeals process in place, so ensuring that individuals affected by AI decisions have some sort of recourse. And then they're adopting innovative approaches with sandboxes and learning lab models. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Clarissa. This is a great brief and we appreciate it. Representative Filer?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I was just wondering, within your studies there and those reports, the states that are passing this type of legislation and passing more regulations, is there, well, I don't know if, maybe you would have probably done this, but I'm wondering if there's are those going to be states that AI groups might not want to even operate in because of the too much I understand a little bit of regulation, but not too much regulation, because if you regulate the industry too much, we lose out. But I'm just wondering, like, say Texas and in these other places, has the AI groups been like, well, we don't even want to deal with that?
Okay. Clarissa, any thoughts?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think there's a general air of trying to be pretty cautious with this legislation, specifically looking at Virginia as an example, with their governor vetoing that legislation. Colorado by far has the most comprehensive legislation in place at the moment. I didn't look into whether AI groups are specifically avoiding that state, but I can certainly follow up on that for you.
Great. Any follow-up? Go ahead.
And I think, Mr. Chairman, I kind of like this like AI council that was it, did you say New Mexico or was that Arizona
Clarissa?
Mr. Chairman, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, that was in Texas.
or in Texas? So Mr. Chairman, with Texas is pretty open for data center, all these different types of things like that. But like an AI council, like something like they did, I'd like to see more on that. And maybe that's something maybe that this committee itself could take up, or maybe on its own standalone, because this is the next step in data centers anyways. A lot of it's going towards AI.
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman.
absolutely. Thank you, Representative Filer. Any additional questions for Ms. Nord? Anyone online have their hand up? We can't see you if you do. Okay. Excellent. Thank you for that briefing. Really appreciate it. And it's interesting to see the progress that's been made nationwide over the last year and what's going on right now in states. They're looking obviously at the same issues we're looking at. All right. Do we have Mr. Greenwood? Excellent.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just in reflection, in the last couple of years, we're seeing a lot of legislation from different states, but that's because of just the incredible development of AI in the last couple of years. And I just think about a video that was generated by AI. You look at it from a couple of years ago, and now you look at one, and the quality is leagues, worlds apart. And so this is a rapidly developing situation, and it's really good that we're taking some time to talk about these things.
Yeah, the folks streaming this don't even realize that it's all artificially intelligent generated at this point in time anyway, and that none of us really exist. So good for us for achieving the first AI meeting. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, just one more comment too. I think we ought to look at too is, not just as a committee, but the legislature as a whole. That this last session, we passed a lot of laws on who's even allowed to own land, who's owns your business, all these different things. So these are all a bunch of more regulatory things that everybody has to go through in order to, maybe pursue an AI company type in Wyoming. So I really want to just tread lightly on not too much, because it's not just the regulation of the AI, but it's all the other bills that have been passed also.
Definitely. Yeah, Representative Filer, the mantra of the select committee for a lot of years has been regulate to enable rather than regulate to restrict, right? Making sure that we're drawing bright lines, but we're not holding back innovation. And this is a space where we need to be really sensitive to that as well. All right, with that, let's bring in Mr. Greenwood.
Mr. Chairman.
Excellent. Daza, we see you. Welcome. It's good to see your face.
Thank you so much for the generous invitation to testify, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, members of the committee. If may I screen share?
One moment, looks like we're getting set up for that.
Okay. Great. Well, that's happening. I'll give a quick introduction.
All right, you should be okay now, Deza.
Oh, great. How does this look?
We can see it. And one thing I'll note, Deza, just before you proceed, is that there's about a 1.5 second lag as we converse. So take that into consideration that we have a little bit of a time lag based on how the technology is being processed in the communication.
Okay, thanks. I will try to bear that in mind. So for those of you who I don't know, oh, actually, I'm going to, if you don't mind, I'm going to put you on, put the speaker on mute just because the feedback is a little bit difficult to manage. And I'll try to get through these quickly. But I apologize if you interrupt me before the end of the slides, I may not hear you.
Okay.
Great. So my name is Dazza Greenwood. I run a research lab at MIT called law.mit.edu, which focuses on using technology for legal tasks and processes. I have been an attorney in the past, a technology attorney, a state government attorney, and worked on a lot of legislation over the decades. And I'm very proud to have been able to testify before this joint committee in the past on this topic of generative AI, and before that on other topics. Generative AI, however, and in particular autonomous systems, is really my deepest area of expertise and the thing I'm chiefly interested in. I wrote my first AI program in 1989. It was a chat bot called ELIZA. It was an implementation of the MIT ELIZA program in a computer science course that we wrote in Lisp, and it really piqued my interest in AI and what's possible. Later, as a lawyer, I helped to write the Uniform Electronic Transactions Act, which is now law in every state and territory, and have been working since around 2010 at creating autonomous organizations through whatever the then current technology is. And now, finally, with generative AI, I believe the tools exist to actually achieve what previously had been more like science fiction with respect to how AI can be used to conduct the full life cycle of transactions and business processes. So I believe the topic of this segment of the committee's hearing is on AI liability, data provenance, and automated decision making. And I wanted to call to the committee's attention a bill that is not very well known, but sort of perhaps may fit between the cracks of some of the legislation that you were just briefed on. And it's a model that I would commend for your consideration. It's a California bill, SB 813, and it's sometimes considered a third way. And just fundamentally, it's kind of regulation I think is appropriate right now with AI, which is basically no regulation or close to no regulation during this time of dynamic innovation. But it does have a mechanism for some type of oversight and disclosure, and it's a multi-stakeholder regulatory organization, or an MRO. Sort of like a type of self-regulatory organization that it sets up and that can certify models or applications as meeting certain kind of safety and other responsible use or reliability kind of criteria. And when such a model or application is certified, then it receives a kind of provisional safe harbor for liability, a rebuttable presumption. So let me just break, and actually I'm going to come off mute or I'll bring you off mute now just to double check if it's appropriate for me to continue to mention how this legislation works, or if you'd rather have me move on to another topic.
No, Deza, please continue. I think it's interesting to hear a little bit about this.
Okay, thank you. So fundamentally, again, the bill is at SB 813, and you can find it. It's gone through some amendments recently, just a few days ago, and it's kind of working its way through the legislature now. So whether it's enacted or not, I think it's a model that's worth looking at. So the underpinning of legitimacy for these self-regulatory certification schemes is some state agency approves the certifiers, these self-regulatory bodies. In California, they chose the Attorney General. How that might work in Wyoming, I think, is an open question, or if that's even the right mechanism is an open question. There's some minimum requirements that they're independent and that they disclose their funding. The MRO. Very interestingly, and I think importantly, this is completely voluntary. So no model provider or application provider would be required to get the certification, but they could choose to if they wanted to avail themselves of the liability limit, or to also, if they wanted to have more publicly available disclosures and to show off the certifications that they got. There are some minimum requirements for plans that the entities have to mention as part of their kind of application, and like the big quasi existential or high risk areas that are feared from this technology include chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear threats. And these models are great at science. I can say firsthand from lab projects and research prototypes that we've done, and that unfortunately can be used by bad actors as well. So that raises questions about when these powerful models put maybe like what could be powerful weapons in the hands of adversaries. It requires some red teaming and some broader kind of societal and economic risk benefit disclosures. But other than that, the plans can include whatever the applicant wants to focus on. Let me just kind of whiz through some of this. As I mentioned, they're publicly posted, which is good, which also means if this is passed in California or another state, other states like Wyoming or elsewhere could take the certifications and use them or repost them, or say there's some sort of reciprocity, I suppose. Like if you're certified with some minimum standard in any state, you'll be considered certified in our state. This is the legal part I wanted to go into, because I think this is the crux of the whole thing, which is if the company goes through the bureaucracy of getting certified, what they get in return is this rebuttable presumption. And the rebuttable presumption particularly goes to tort, and what it presumes is that you've exercised reasonable care, which is one of the factors you have to allege and prove in order to get like personal injury or property damage or whatever you're pleading for in tort. It is a rebuttable presumption, so the plaintiff can introduce some evidence that rebuts the presumption, such as, I don't know, some major misconduct or something like that. But it's not bad as a start. And so I wanted to just commend to you this idea of a kind of a safe harbor and providing something like a liability limitation in return for things like disclosure and possibly some sort of like stamp that the disclosure has been made according to minimum standards, as a kind of third way alternative between doing absolutely nothing and over-regulating in some way that would maybe be unattractive for industry and could chill innovation. I thought it was very interesting, and so I put my name behind it. There's also like a bunch of AI scholars and researchers and people that signed a big open letter saying that this is a good model and it should be looked at. I think that as well. So there's a few more remarks I would like to make if the committee is interested and if there's time on what's happening in the economy right now with AI agents being turned into labor and new things that are happening with new kinds of organizations and how good that is for the economy. But I'd like to pause at this time if there's any questions or comments on what I just mentioned about SB.
Great. Let's see if there's any. Let's see if there's any questions on that particular piece of legislation. Anyone have any questions on legislation? All right, seeing none, please proceed, Daza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, so this is kind of cool. So what I've been doing a lot lately in my business, which is civics.com, which does consulting for companies and sometimes government, is building so-called AI agent systems. The last time I testified, I brought some other experts with me, Alex Riedman from Agent Ops and some others who briefed the committee on what AI agents are. So I'll take that as read for the moment, although happy to go back and backfill some of that. But just in a sentence, it's a way to apply generative AI within a kind of application that lets it act kind of like a person, in that you can give it a goal and it can come up with a plan and has access to tools and APIs and ways that it can do things. It has some like memory that can go across, time, or could have shared memory across different agents, and then can take actions to achieve that goal and can kind of adapt over time, and it can even change its plan. So it's like somewhat autonomous. And it turns out that this is a very good design pattern to get more of the potential value of generative AI out beyond just having to do a prompt and an output. And there are a lot of examples of people doing this right now. In software engineering, for example, there's major there's major disruption in software engineering with AI agents doing a lot of the coding with software engineers, and increasingly instead of software engineers, where the hiring is already becoming impacted because these things are so capable of doing like the entire life cycle of software engineering. And that's not the only area where they're coming out. In my domain expertise is in law, and in the legal industry, there's a lot of agents that are coming through legal tech companies now. Spellbook is an example of a contract system that plugs into Microsoft Word and does contract review and redlining and different analysis. And they have really embraced agents lately, and it's really supercharged their product. And so the agent will look at what the lawyer's trying to do based on a natural language prompt and comes up with a plan. Has multiple different agents, will start to execute the plan, check it against what the goal was. It can revise the plan if it's not working out so well, and then provide a really good, like higher quality output. You may have heard of deep research. OpenAI has a new button just on their ChatGPT. So does Gemini from Google, Perplexity, and really all of them now. And they're also agent driven, sort of like this, where they'll go out and look at a bunch of sources, come up with a plan, and come up with a quite high quality final output. So that's in a research report context. This one with Spellbook is in a contract review context. This other one here on the right is my friend John Ney, who I think I had testify like a couple of years to the committee when generative AI was still relatively new, just about the topic in general from a legal perspective. He has since gone on to found a company called Norm.ai, which does regulatory compliance using agents. And so these agents are kind of trained to basically do what a compliance officer would do. So they have all the playbooks and all of the training materials and things like that, and they will look as an input at kind of what the employee is doing on the screen, or disclosures or outputs before they get sent to the client or the regulator or whomever, and will go through the checks and can help make sure that that the company's aligned and can raise issues before they like metastasize into regulatory noncompliance. So anyway, there's just, and the last thing I'll just mention is that it's really catching on strong in more of a consumer context now with transactions, which are near and dear to my heart. So you can now purchase items using agents in a different kind of context of agents that will do like a workflow for you that will go and look at different products or services that meet your requirements and can find your criteria. And if you give them some purchase authority, they can actually purchase it for you. Perplexity has something called Buy with Pro, which for the $20 a month Pro, they can purchase things for you. I've used that. Amazon just announced that they're going to include agentic purchasing as part of their next Alexa. Payments are part of this. Stripe is a major payment provider in the United States and in some other jurisdictions. They have announced not long ago the AI agent toolkit, which extends their API so that you can provide these AI agents with like a virtual credit card and like a spending limit and some other criteria, and they can go and actually perform the purchases. It does some other things as well. These agents are really catching on, and more to the point, they're starting to take in a workplace context, like for labor, all these cool things that they're doing are people are realizing they can replace labor or they can augment labor, but I'll just be straight up about this. They can replace labor. This is great and terrible. The people, I think there's much higher estimates, but I think a very credible estimate is we can get like a 3, 4, or 5% boost in our GDP by 2030 or earlier. I think now that this is like 2 months old. So I think the more credible estimates are even earlier that we'll get that kind of boost from cost cutting having the capabilities of these agents from companies, but also for consumers, like Consumer Reports, for example, who I do work with. Their innovation lab is looking at having consumer agents that will go and relentlessly look for the best deals for you and, just like be perpetually a fiduciary for you to try to bargain for you and get your costs down and dispute fees and fines and charges and all that stuff. So the societal goods are considered really significant. I consider them significant. And yet, as I mentioned, it's the great and scary because it also raises concerns about, what can go wrong when we provide this amount of autonomy to software and also just the second order issues with like labor disruption and joblessness and the potential for I don't know, if depending on whose report you read, like riots or civil disorder and other issues that can happen when there's major job disruption. So I think there's questions that this raises. None of this is like, I don't want to be alarming today in May 2025, but the writing is on the wall. I'm here to testify that this stuff is coming soon. Like there's no new innovations needed. It's just a matter of implementation and rollout. And because of the economic imperatives, we can foresee that this is going to be very great supercharge for businesses, but it will have some labor implications as well. So maybe retraining or some other ways to deal with that we could talk about. And the final thing my final slide on this is a little bit more speculative. Everything I just have said to this moment has got high confidence. I'll just disclose that this is lower confidence, but I think it's credible, which is that there will come a time when the same kind of people that have come before this committee talking about DAOs and quasi-autonomous legal entities and other people beyond blockchain people are really looking at ways to cluster and orchestrate these AI agents together and wrap it as a kind of LLC or a C Corp or a subsidiary and basically create autonomous legal entities that are business entities. And the economics of this are just crazy. Like when I was looking at some of the proposals to VCs and other funders, the marginal cost of duplicating one of these businesses is like copy and paste cost and compute. Whereas the cost of standing up like even just another department, much less a full business now, is incredible. It's most of the cost of the business usually, unless it's got capital expenditures. And so just imagine being able to copy and paste a full business and to be able to get into markets and to have businesses supporting your businesses. It's kind of profound. And so I think it raises questions about how to address these changes, which are already upon us with AI agents, but also which are coming. And I think the real question is how to avail your state and all of our states and our country and our people of this tremendous capability that we have, so we can use it for good, for prosperity, and also find a way to manage the disruptions which are inevitable. So thank you for considering my remarks, and I'd be happy to discuss any of the implications, answer questions, or be at your service.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Deza. All right, questions for Deza based on discussion. Yep, go ahead, Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Deza, for that information. Wow, it's really exciting what's going on in the world of AI. How soon do you think that autonomous agents would actually be available in the commercial sense to the everyday citizen? For example, I just have gotten my mom comfortable with using the talking feature on ChatGPT, and now she'll start talking to it like a therapist, and it's kind of funny, kind of cute. But when will an actual agent that's able to conduct business, when would that be available to the commercial side of things?
Deza?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Co-Chairman. The answer is, I guess, 5 months ago. And the marker that I think of for this is Perplexity. And many of you may have heard of Perplexity. It's a competitor partly to ChatGPT from OpenAI and to Gemini by Google, but its focus is more like search. And they were the first to deploy a generally available commercial agent to help with shopping. I mentioned it in one of the earlier slides, and it's called Shop Pro, and it's for Perplexity Pro users. So it's not completely freely available in that you need to pay $20 a month to be a Pro subscription holder. But I would say yes, that is now available, and it was quickly followed by several other agents. So, for example, almost everybody now can use the research agent, which is really handy if you're trying to do, like, for example, a bigger purchase like a refrigerator, or make a bigger decision about, different options for a wedding. This can take a lot of time to do all the research and to put things together. These deep research capabilities are multi-agent systems, and they're very, very almost science fiction level performant in terms of the technology that they can apply to synthesize a lot of data and give a sensible final report. It's similar to what people might have paid me for to do a research report in the past. I can't sell that anymore since we've had deep research. So these are some examples of existing agents that the general public can use.
Paul, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just trying to imagine a situation where someone has their property taken wrongfully somehow by an artificial agent acting on someone else's behalf that like took out money out of an account or something like that. That would be that's just another layer of ethical problems that I don't think a lot of people have had to think about.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chairman. Thoughts, Deza?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a critical question, and while most of my work on AI agents has been commercial, I have done some academic research in the area as well. And the first most important topic that's come up in that context is exactly the vulnerability you just identified, which is what happens when AI agents start to do bad things and cause harm to others, and how do we avoid that? And when it happens, who's left holding the bag? And can we even lay our hands on those people? Can we know who they were to start with? Or is it going to be hard to attribute the acts of an agent to a legal entity if it was like a bot attack and they deliberately obscured who they were? And these are all very foreseeable kinds of problems. So the best thinking I'm aware of came out of MIT, and it's called authenticated delegation for authorized AI agents. And you can do a Google search for that, and we've got a little paper here that describes at least part of how to get some armor to shield yourself from the worst excesses of the kind of vulnerabilities you mentioned by applying existing authentication and authorization protocols, specifically OAuth 2 and OpenID Connect, to these agents, and then maybe not doing business with agents unless you can find one of these signed web tokens to show that it's been an authorized app, and protect yourself in that way. And this is not so different from, like, you wouldn't want to just let some alien application into your network, or like click on an email to start a process if you didn't have a good idea of who the counterparty was. So I'd say the same kinds of things we've had to learn the hard way to defend against in normal web channels like email and text and web browsing. We now also need to figure out how to apply and be aware of, and be diligent about through this new mode, which is the AI agent.
Des, I want to follow up on that co-chairman's question. In the past, a lot of scams and phishing and everything else that's basically fraud-based attacks that have come through email and other vehicles have typically been at least attempts that were often a little bit clumsy, poorly worded, something else. They would typically have flaws, and that was one of the ways that you could identify it being disingenuous, is that not enough genuine work went into it, and so bad language, bad spelling, something along those lines would always be a bit of a clue. Now we're at a point where you can write a perfect letter on any topic with all the right details using any AI engine. You don't even have to have a pro subscription to get a pretty good product. So it seems like it's going to be doing an exceptional job of empowering these fraudulent communications where they're much less detectable. And in fact, you could enable it so that you had an API driven system that was auto generating novel letters for every one of the contacts, so that it doesn't even go through a spam filter, and there's almost no chance of detection for it moving forward. So tremendous use of resources on that side. And it seems like, regrettably, the battle, the counter to that, is to now employ AI to try to counter AI actively in this space, leading to the near-term heat death of the universe as a response to just trying to get through email fraud. I mean, is there a better approach to it than that, or is that really the direction we're currently headed?
I'll be frank. I don't know how the future is going to play out in this respect, and I assume the future will be somewhat like the past, although things are changing. And in the past, we could certainly count on wrongdoers who are clever and in some cases resourced by like enemy governments or criminal organizations to do everything they can to exploit our vulnerabilities. And therefore, I'm pretty confident that that's where we're headed, to use like one of your two options. But at the same time, I'm also confident that there's countermeasures that we can find that will not, trigger the heat death of the universe too soon. I hope. Simple things that families, for example, or teams of workers should start to do, which is just good information hygiene in a hostile environment, like behind enemy lines, for example, if you were in military or intelligence. But now civilians should learn how to have a safe word that they do not ever tell anybody else, so that you can, in a pinch, distinguish whether the entity that's called you on the phone that says that they just need to get bail, or they're at the hospital and they need PayPal or whatever, and it sounds just like your cousin. and knows a lot of stuff that only your cousin you think would know. It maybe looks like your cousin on video, that you have some last ditch way to disambiguate them, and to whatever. And so I think there's some low hanging fruit things that we can do during the transition phase. There's a lot of companies, including Google, to their credit, I think, that have got deep watermarks now in all their AI text generated and video and image, and I think even audio now, outputs with an algorithm that lets you immediately I distinguish that it was generated by AI from like like writing that wasn't generated by AI. So I think watermarks and different types of cryptographic steganography, just to get a little technical, is another avenue we could look at. But overall, I foresee we'll have more trouble before we have more solutions, because the technology is being adopted quick, and I think that's appropriate, but it's not yet completely secure. And I don't even think we completely understand how to completely secure it, because we're building the airplane as we fly it with this technology.
Great. Committee, additional questions? I don't mean to take up all the time. Any hands up online, Clarissa? All right. I'll check. Dazza, did you have further presentation, or can I dig into a couple of questions with you?
I have no further presentation, and I'm at your service, Mr. Chair.
Excellent. All right. Do you have any questions before I get started? Go ahead. Yep. Go ahead, Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm concerned about, and this happened during our legislative session. We saw the release of DeepSeek, the Chinese AI, and I am curious as to what kind of impact the country of origin for a language model would have, and if that is a security threat for like state property or for the people of Wyoming. That came out during our legislative session, and so I was curious what you thought about that.
Dazza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Co-Chairman, I'm concerned about what I would consider a threat from our adversary, China, in the area of AI. And this covers a lot of ground. Most of it is military and intelligence, but just as for civilian business use and family household kind of use, consumer use, I do think that there's some lingering misgivings that I have about what's buried down in DeepSeek and other models in terms of, like, for example, although I've not done myself, but I've seen research that shows there's a ideological bend in some of the training and maybe post-training. So for topics like Tiananmen Square, you will not get a fair and balanced and accurate view if you're inquiring about that. And there may be other ideological or political distortions that come from these models. And then there's also, in my mind, I think a real question about hidden triggers. So these are just the things that we can test in the open, but are there like Manchurian Candidate, style things that you could, do to activate really malicious behavior? It's hard to know. It's hard to test every such possible trigger, but we do know that you can do types of deep poisoning of training material, so that if later you introduce certain sequence of tokens, you'll get a very anomalous kind of behavior. So there may be other kind of like attack vectors there. And so I'm somewhat dubious to answer your question. However, the reason I'm hedging to say I'm like somewhat dubious and have like misgivings as opposed to, heck no, like let's ban it, is that it's also kind of good. Like it's a pretty cool model. They had some real innovation that we didn't do, that's brought the cost way down. To their credit, I don't mind saying at all, it's open source. And so we can look at it and we can look at the weights and we could replicate things. So I think by and large, I can't begrudge them. And because they're doing things, if they'd asked my opinion about how to do generative AI, and if I was in a mood to help Chinese companies, I would have said do it the way that they did it. minus the Politburo, political bending that we can see that they did. And so, and we do want to have competition, and it's like, a free world. But within that context, I think having some reticence and some, some reservations before relying completely on these models is really, really important because we can't fully understand the provenance or the interests that they're doing the bidding of.
But
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I appreciate competition. I'm a free market guy. I appreciate competition as much as the next guy. I really enjoyed seeing that this made our local industries kind of sweat a little bit, seeing that there is competition out there and that they're able to operate at a fraction of the costs of what the amount of capital that they're bringing in. This is just really a specific question. Do you think that it would be worthwhile to prohibit the use of something like DeepSeek on a computer associated with the state?
Deza?
Mr. Chairman, I I think a blanket prohibition to me sounds too heavy because it is open source and it's free, and there are types of activities and types of computers and certain kind of little niches and organizations where this could be absolutely the best, a good one of several models to have in order to do certain kinds of things. And so I'd be reluctant to talk about an absolute ban because states are big enterprises and there's a role for open source, and it's hard to have a complete purity test for all open source software. You'd end up with very little open source software, but I think you just have to contain it, I would say. So if you have like high risk, mission critical, high value or other or like maybe very political sorts of things, that probably would not be a great place to put like, just to be blunt, a Chinese model. But for other maybe more pedestrian types of things, I think we'd just be harming ourselves as U.S. state governments if we didn't let parts of our organizations have those, understand them, fruitfully use them. So I guess I've got a little bit of like a yes and answer. That's partly because I should probably say I have a bias here that I should disclose, which is when I was in government, I was in a state government working in the IT part of the state government. And I just feel like more open source is generally better than less open source, and more variety and more options for the state workers to have is generally better. And so, I'd be looking, but this is subject to change too. Like if we discover that there's a backdoor or some real security issue that's deeper than the ones that we're aware of now, I might change my attitude to say that it should be prohibited. But based on what I know right now, it seems like it's something more to be wary of and have a watchful eye on, but to use it for maybe like lower intensity type things and to be aware of it. Also, I guess I should just say one more time, I don't know how many of you have used this, but it is pretty cool. Like it actually does. It performs slightly better on some evals and benchmarks that I use than other open source, and it's pretty cheap, it's pretty small, it's innovative. So, I don't think we should hurt ourselves by not having the best tools available.
Thought, Mr. Chairman?
Just one last comment, I guess. It is a fantastic product that is open source, and so I was just curious to see if there was a thought of security concern there, but it's complicated and multifaceted. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chairman. Deza, do you know anything with regard to the training of it, the details of training? One of the things obviously that determines the quality of the capabilities of the AI product are going to be how much information it's trained on and the quality of that information. A lot of our larger engines right now struggle with access to open source and accessible material for training, and that's contentious in the United States. It would be honestly very empowering for an AI developer to ignore intellectual property and just basically program with every bit of information they can possibly get together laws be damned. And I'm curious if I don't know how DeepSeek was trained and whether there is a lot of discussion around that, whether it's the same material that, GPT and Claude and other engines are being trained on, or whether they used a different data set and a broader training package.
Mr. Chairman, I do not know the exact corpus of content that was used as the training sets for DeepSeek. And I'm not sure, I'd have to search, but I'm not sure that they published it. Which kind of raises two questions in my mind. One of them is so I've used a word without defining it, which is open source, like generative AI or open source models. That's actually not there's no agreed definition. Some people would say, so long as the model is free to download and use, it's open source. Other people like Dan Katz, who I invited to testify a couple of years ago before this committee, and his company say you also have to have the weights of the model available so that you can kind of change the weights. Other people would say, no, that's not enough. You need to have actually like an archive of all the training data so you could replicate creating the entire model from beginning to end, and also the processes of how you did the training and all the test sets and everything else, and these like checkpoints and everything. I don't have a dog in that fight about when something is or isn't open source, and I'm not sure what DeepSeek used. To me, I think the underlying question from an American perspective is what's okay and what's not okay to use in training these large language models. And I, with tremendous respect, Mr. Chairman, may take a somewhat different view than the way that you just characterized it. In terms of laws be damned. Part of the law of copyright is fair use, and I think there's a real question about whether the what's happening between the data that's ingested into training and when it gets vectorized and turned into high dimensional vector space for one of these models is so transformative that it falls within fair use, and then whether the outputs are almost always, like 99.9% of the time, look so different from what any one of those individual copywritten materials were that it's transformative, and whether the public good served by having access to this tremendous technology is so great that as a matter of public policy, we do not want to over enforce other aspects of IP law and again harm ourselves from the advantages of this technology. So I have my sense is if there was a role for government with on the topic of how to apply IP law in this context, that we should probably get clearer on things like the safe harbors that I was just showing you in that California bill for model providers to indicate like that we can use a lot of more material and maybe provide some sort of like royalty or forced license or some kind of revenue share or something attribution to people. But I think we're only harming ourselves by artificially restricting the training material. We should find a way to have at least some United States models that have all data, maybe not like nuclear secrets and things like that. So a tiny amount of like exempted data, but if it's just Mickey Mouse and IP stuff and that sort of things, and New York Times, put it all in there and let's have the most powerful model possible, and in that way dominate the transition to a new economy.
I think that honestly, that does resonate with my thoughts and interests on that as well. And it's obviously struggling to get there. I look at, scientific journal articles and know that there's certainly some AIs that have been trained on a broad range of available scientific articles, but there is no engine that has just consumed all of science, and that would be incredibly empowering to have. But it's the intellectual property side of it that stands in the way, not the technology that stands in the way. And it's honestly disappointing that you don't have an AI engine at this point that's read every journal article ever published. That would be an incredible resource. And Daza, we've got just a few more minutes. One of the topics that we wanted to look at gets into what some of the other states are doing, which is critical decision making. and a human in the loop for critical decision making, which is seemingly a relatively low hanging fruit piece of legislation to ensure that AI can be used for decision making, but can't make adverse decisions without a human taking a look and making sure that that decision's made well. And I think we talked briefly about that last year as something that was on the horizon. We see that some states are looking at that and have passed legislation on it. I just wanted to see if you had any comments or advice based on what others are doing on that human in the loop aspect of it and what best practices we should consider if we draft legislation in that space.
Yes. Yes, Mr. Chairman, my thinking on that is honestly in the middle of evolving. If I may, just as recently as a year ago, would have been a strong advocate, and I think I was before this committee, of having human control was the word I was using over these otherwise somewhat autonomous processes at every step of the way. And I remember vividly a couple years ago or more now, working with the committee up for an amendment for the Dow LLC law to ensure that if at some point there were no humans there, that the entity would be dissolved, because you can't have a thing running around in the open market making decisions and taking actions with no humans. I was confident at that point in asserting. I'm no longer so confident about this, and so I'm currently just actively reviewing what my own thoughts are on the best role. One of the major reasons why I'm backing off for the moment, at least, what I'd said earlier to this committee and to others, is because of the results I'm seeing from well-designed, well-engineered AI agent systems or autonomous systems. When these things are done well, what I am observing is that they perform as well or better than the next available human might have performed. And so, I just am wondering about the economics and the prudent kind of governance and stewardship of a system where you say some major part of it has to go and become manual, and whether that still scales or whether you can get the benefit of a full transformation, and whether perhaps other measures, such as if there's an adverse decision, maybe making a appeal or having some other avenue, or taking some of the savings even and putting in a reserve fund and paying out people that may have had a bad decision or something like that. But the idea of just what may be handcuffing yourself to the past because you've taken a major swath of an overall system and caused it to remain manual. I don't know. To me, that sounds like saying, we can move from horse and buggy to car, but on the road, we just have to make sure that we maintain, wagon wheels on everything, because, we're attached to wagon wheels, or we have to make sure that we still have the horse, just driving the car because we love horses, or it's sort of like it's an essential component and we can't have a full transition. So I'd say we should look for other ways to make sure we have safeguards and protections, and that we maintain due process and have our values intact. And I'm just no longer certain that having the human kind of maintaining a manual process, just for lack of a better word, over important workflows within a system is the best way to do that.
Great, thank you for that. Appreciate it. All right, I'd love to keep talking about this for a long time, but we are pretty close to the end of the item. Any last questions, committee, for Daza? Do we have anyone on the select committee that's on with a hand up? All right, Daza, we really appreciate your time as always, and we appreciate the update, and things are changing so fast. I think we'll certainly call you back, and I hope you're going to be available for either our second meeting or our third meeting. We'll bring you back for some more discussion, if that would be okay, if we can get a little bit more of your time. Your insight is invaluable.
Thank you so much for your gracious comments and the opportunity to testify, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, and members of the committee. And you can count on it. It's really a privilege to be able to work with this committee, and the way that you deal with new technology and make law, I think, is, as I've said before, to other states and to everyone that will listen, I think you're the poster child of how to legislate And so I'm just a huge fan of the way that you govern and the way that you self-govern. I am forever at your service, and I thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Okay, let's go to public comment, and hopefully we can keep it relatively short and stay on schedule. We've got a couple more things, and then we need everybody to be driving away probably, so got to get out early. We have public comments. All right, I see Brendan's up, so we must have Brendan for public comment. Okay, a second. Okay, excellent. Brendan, if we can go about 2 minutes so we can stay on schedule and get everybody out of town, the floor is yours.
Or I'll try to keep it brief. Can everybody hear me?
We can.
Okay, I'll try to avoid talking about heat death of the universe and high dimensional vectors. I'm going to talk specifically about the other legislation that other states are doing and some considerations for the committee. First off, I'll say for the record, my name is Brendan Marr, an MIT Media Laboratory alumnus from 1995 to 98. I was there when Marvin Minsky, who was the director of the MIT AI Laboratory, was at the Media Laboratory mentoring us, as well as Patty Moss, who ran the Software Agents Group. And in that period of time, we were doing all these things. We were doing agents that were buying and selling things, just not at scale. Right. So this is the background I'm coming from. What I'd like to do is I'd like to throw out a couple things. One is I concur with really everything that Daz has said. Especially his the model of I'm a little short on the acronym there, the MOR by California. I think that's a great thing to look at. It is also something that when we combine those kinds of constructs with the constructs that we have enabled through our DUNA legislation regarding governance, we come up with some very, very interesting things. So that's something that we're going to have to, consider at some point. But really, the other thing I wanted to do, Senator Rothfuss, was answer your question about do we have a better approach? And we do, and we're working on it. This is exactly what the Cryptographic Seals and Stamps Act is about. It's about registration of identity for Wyoming entities, but it's also about how we bind intellectual property, including artificial intelligence, AI and AI agents, to entities that are registered in Wyoming. So we're working on this. I'm very confident that at the end of the day, we're going to have some extraordinarily innovative solutions for beginning to approach, solving these issues that quite frankly, it is not like the way any other state is processing that. I do have a few more things to say, but I will take questions.
Great. Thank you, Brendan. Any questions for Brendan? All right. Seeing none, Brendan, if you've just got like one more closing comment, that would be great so that we can transition to the next topic.
Yes. So the transitioning comment would be on the other states' legislation. They all got in the room together and copied each other. And quite frankly, to be quite blunt, it's dog poop. It's nonsense. It'll never work. It's not in any resemblance the way the industry works. There's no mention of foundational models or a training versus inference. I can go on, but my ending point here and recommendation for the committee to consider is that the committee establish for the blockchain committee itself an internal formal working group for you all to really understand how these things work and how they're moving, because we're not going to be able to legislate them without a deeper understanding. And I'd be willing to push some content to all the committee members that are interested. And as Daz has said, this is not about the future. It's about 5 months ago. And that's all I have to say. I commend the committee. You all do a tremendous job, and you really take the time to listen. And this is the most important thing for our country and passing sane legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Brendan, for that. I think we should definitely consider this a working group. We're going to have to not appoint anybody to that right now, but I definitely see the value in making sure that we have at least somebody educated in what's rapidly going on, because this is going to change the way that really everyone lives their lives in the future. So thank you for your comments.
Sure. And I'm at your service.
Next, we have another online commenter,
Yep, Mr. Chairman, we have Miss Agan.
Miss Agan. All right, welcome. There we go. Miss Agan, hello.
Hi, Chairman. Are you able to hear me okay?
You are coming in loud and clear. Thank
Okay,
you.
great. Thank you. I'll try to make this quick. I know I have a number of concerns about this. I'll try to read it kind of like as a bullet list. Carrie Agan, again, Buffalo resident and retired geoscientist. I am speaking for myself. I wrote most of my comments before Mr. Greenwood's presentation and the committee's questions, so I may repeat some of your concerns. I apologize for this. I'm not sure I can adequately express how bad an idea this is, governance by AI. The cold hard reality is that AI equals computer programs, as Mr. Greenwood admitted, of course. Therefore, governance by AI equals governance by computer programmers, aka developers. As no one is without bias, computer programmers, whether intentionally or unintentionally, build biases into their programs. I believe Mr. Greenwood and Mr. Marr went into this a little bit. Some of this bias might be removed, but not all. That's impossible. And in removing some, others might be introduced. I'm going to set up some questions, not for you to answer, but for you to think about and consider. Can AI truly perform in an unbiased manner? I think that depends not only on the task it was asked to perform, but much more importantly, how it was programmed to perform that task. And Mr. Greenwood spoke to this. AI is the ultimate in opacity, the ultimate black box, whose code cannot be examined, like voting machines, but on steroids. Will the coding be able to be obtained via FOIA or in a court case? I can't believe you guys are even considering this. Your legislators, governance by AI will literally mean your jobs will go away at some point. I don't even, this is insanity. Okay, there's some other problems with AI, including that it can only make decisions based on what information is made available to it. And Mr. Greenwood spoke to this a little bit. And it can only use the information it's directed to use. Chairman Rothfuss brought up about data quality. Humans are taught to value certain sources of the others based on trustworthiness. Is that ability being built into AI programs? This is a prime setup for making bad decisions simply because it's not accessing or not allowed to access all the information of quality needed to make fully informed and appropriate decisions. In addition, governance by AI means unelected and unaccountable computer programmers will be making decisions that affect us all. They will essentially be government actors, acting for and as governmental officials or employees. This will truly be the end of our republic and the democratic means by which we elect our representatives. Transparency, human oversight, methods of recourse, all that, great ideas. But it remains that this is still an incredibly bad idea. Bad decisions will be made for many reasons. Many folks who will be caused harm may not be able to seek recourse because of the money it might take. Another question is, who will own the output of AI? Will it be proprietary, like the images of ballots, voting ballots, which are literally owned by the voting machine companies? How will it obtain information that was spoken about just a little bit, hopefully in a legal manner? And what happens if AI does something really bad? What and who will have recourse, and in what manners? Sorry, I'm trying to wrap it up. Safe harbor liability limitation, rebuttal presumption that the developer exercise reasonable care. If these are not get out of jail free cards, I don't know what is. I can't wrap my head around this. If the state certifies these programs and something goes wrong, will the state pursue recourse against the state? We can't even get our attorney general to pursue voting fraud allegations. And speaking of voting, there's talk of using AI in voting. This entire idea will just turn into another way to harm folks and get away with it. I don't mean intentionally necessarily, but it will happen. And giving your credit card information to a computer program, that's literally begging to be ripped off. I apologize for this being long. I just want to cover as many concerns as I could think of. One more is is this all really worth the incredible expense, energy usage, and coolant needs, whether water or some other substance, especially given the incredible number of jobs that will be destroyed? This will not create jobs. This will destroy jobs. Just think about it. We're using AI to do things that people are doing right now. And if this is not also the antithesis of the green energy transition that requiring us to ramp down hydrocarbon use, I don't know what is. I mean, this is, I don't even know what to say. This is such a bad idea, and it's very likely unconstitutional if it's being used for governance. This is an incredibly dangerous direction. If you all are really insisting on going in this direction, I cannot possibly suggest more strongly that we slow down, just as I believe Representative Singh suggested. What is the rush? And can't we slow down enough to ensure there are as few bugs as possible and creating as many protections as possible before it's rolled out? I mean, where's the fire? Thank you. I will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Agan. Any questions from the committee? No questions from the committee. I just I wanted to address a couple of points, and I would also like to say that I read your op-ed that you submitted, and I appreciate what you have to say. I would like to clarify that when we're talking about artificial intelligence governance, we are not in any way suggesting that we are abdicating our responsibilities to artificial intelligence. In no way at all would we ever try to abdicate that. I actually went and I got elected and I worked hard for that. So I'm not going to give that to a robot, even though they tried to make a robot AI mayor in Cheyenne. But that guy was soundly defeated. The only legislation that we're proposing in this field and that we were even really reviewing was what other states have done in requiring the intervention of a human being in any artificial intelligence type of decision making. So other states have required the forcible intervention of a human being in a decision such as a healthcare decision being made by AI or housing qualifications made by AI. And so I just wanted to clarify that the intention of this committee is in absolutely no way to abdicate the authority of the Republic to artificial intelligence. So thank you for your comments today, and they are well thought out and your concerns are heard. And I look forward to hearing more from you in upcoming meetings. All right, Chairman Rothfuss, it looks like I'm going to hand it back off to you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Co-Chairman. Any other further public comment? Okay, seeing none, let's close public comment on AI governance. Committee, what's your pleasure for action? Obviously, we've had a great discussion. I don't know whether we're looking to draft anything at this time based on the discussion or not. Representative Filer, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we do have some legislation here that's somewhat been written and maybe we continue with this, but I would also, if it's okay with the committee too, I'd like to look more into this MRO model.
Mhm.
I think it was 813. I don't know if it was out of California or
It's
whatever.
California and it's SB 813.
In that, Mr. Chairman, I just think it'd be, it seemed like it was a little more self-governance, oversight still, all those types of things that, has the regulation, but not too much regulation. Because we still, as AI moves in, it's in our communities now. I'm pretty sure everybody in this room has used AI at least once, right? So I think it's a good idea to look at some of those states, and that one just kind of hit a good point with me, Mr. Chairman. So if maybe it's okay with the committee if we can direct staff to give us whenever that, because I believe that legislation is still going through right now, or maybe when they get a final completion of that, if we could get a copy of that, maybe look at our stuff and that and see if we can't make something really work. Maybe
That sounds good.
Another committee.
That sounds good. So we can forward that discussion certainly on SB 813, understand it a little bit better and try to give some thought to how that might work in Wyoming. One thing obviously is California is a huge market. Everyone will comply with California if California does something because you have to operate in California. We always have to be thoughtful if we copy a regulatory system from California into Wyoming, there's some, possibility of shoulder shrugging as a result of it. So we have to make sure that it's actually effective. But I do like that approach. If we can make that approach work, it was a good concept. I appreciate it from Daza. Any further discussion? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciated Dez's comments that he was kind of rethinking his position on this, because the more I sit here and think about the implications of the government trying to throw itself at how we're going to be asking our programmers to conduct business and what barriers artificial intelligence will be able to have, it will limit the applications of this technology. And so I do have those concerns if we do consider any sort of conversation of trying to form some guidelines or regulations, that the potential of stifling innovation will always exist.
Excellent. Agreed. Any further discussion? Do we want to take action?
For next meeting.
Yeah, for next meeting? Okay. All right. So we'll keep this open, obviously. We'll continue that discussion. We'll look at SB 813. The other question is, do we want any type of a draft on the automated decision-making issues? I do think that Daz's last couple of points were good ones, that, we don't want to put something that forward that actually hinders productivity, but you can certainly put in place a clear right to appeal or something along those lines and make it easy. So that would be an area where we could contemplate. Or we can continue that discussion and try and come back next meeting with some ideas on how that might look. All right, let's do that. Let's try and give some thought to it, but we won't have a clear piece of legislation yet. All right. So with that, let's move on from artificial intelligence governance and get to right to repair laws. I know that we have a legislative service office overview from Ms. Nord. So let's start with that.
Apologies, Mr. Chairman, too much paper in front of me today. But my name is Clarissa Nord and I'm with LSO. I'll review the memo that provides an overview of right to repair laws for y'all. It also highlights Wyoming's past legislative efforts and recent developments in neighboring states. And for your reference, this is Appendix 1901 in your materials. And Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to note that you'll likely hear from several experts who I expect will provide a broader perspective on national trends in right to repair legislation. So to provide an overview of right to repair legislation, it typically aims to ensure that consumers and independent repair providers have access to the resources needed to repair electronic equipment. And at this point in time, all 50 states have introduced some version of right to repair legislation. And the covered products can include consumer electronics, farm equipment, motor vehicles, motorcycles, and certain medical devices. And as of March of this year, 5 states, including California, Colorado, Minnesota, New York, and Oregon, have enacted right to repair laws. And 24 states have introduced or carried over right to repair bills this session. So for Wyoming's legislative history, Wyoming considered right to repair bills focused specifically on farm equipment in 2017 and 2018. And obviously, as we're all sitting here today discussing this topic, neither bill was ultimately enacted. The 2017 bill would have required manufacturers to provide access to diagnostic tools, repair parts, and software, and it specifically excluded motor vehicles. This bill passed out of the House Ag Committee, but it wasn't considered by Committee of the Whole in the House. And then a similar bill in 2018 also passed out of House Ag, but it failed in the House during Committee of the Whole. And then more recently, during the 2024 interim, the Joint Ag Committee reviewed the topic, but they chose not to sponsor legislation for the 2025 session. And then for our neighboring states, Colorado by far has taken the most significant legislative action. In 2022, they enacted a law providing wheelchair users access to repair parts and tools, and they classified the denial of access to these resources as a deceptive trade practice. In 2023, the legislature expanded the law to include farm equipment, and they required access to diagnostic and repair tools while prohibiting practices for owners and independent repair providers like disabling safety features. In 2024, the legislature further expanded the scope of the law to include most digital electronic equipment sold or used in the state after July 1st, 2021. And this law excludes a number of things, including vehicles, boats, gaming consoles, and most medical devices. And beginning next year, manufacturers will be prohibited from designing equipment that impedes independent repairs or degrades performance after repair. And then for our other neighboring states, they've introduced but not enacted legislation specifically addressing the right to repair farm equipment. Montana this year introduced a bill which sought to limit manufacturer restrictions such as parts pairing and restricted access to necessary tools and software needed to repair these products. And this bill was tabled in committee this session. South Dakota introduced legislation requiring manufacturers of ag equipment to provide independent repair access. And they did preserve some protections for proprietary designs. And this bill was withdrawn by the sponsor. Utah last year, they introduced a bill that would support independent repairs of farm equipment and limit manufacturer liability in certain cases, but the bill did not advance out of committee. So, Mr. Chairman, for our neighboring states, they're taking a variety of approaches. Most have primarily focused on farm equipment, but Colorado has adopted a more comprehensive approach. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you all may have.
Subcommittee questions. Ms. Nord, it seems like Colorado is far and away ahead in the game. Do you know they've clearly only had these enacted for a few years? Do you have any sense if it worked well, if they've affected change, or if they've met resistance, or if there's been challenges from industry? I'm just curious how it's going for them.
Mr. Chairman, in my research, I didn't find any implications of those laws. I know that there's been a number of developments from other states that I mentioned, Oregon and New York, and there's quite a bit of industry interest. And I think farm equipment seems to be a primary concern, but I couldn't say that I could see any major implications from those pieces of legislation, but certainly I can defer to other folks who plan to testify.
Yeah, we'll have to look to that public testimony and see what they know about it. That's great. I appreciate that. Did you or Talise, did you happen to look at the Colorado statute? I'm just wondering, is this a giant series of acts? Is it relatively straightforward? Do you have any sense of what they look like? And you might not have looked at them yet, but I'm just curious, haven't looked at them yet. Okay. Sometimes Colorado's laws are very long. I was wondering what the lift would be if we tried to consolidate those three together. Excellent. All right. Any further questions for Ms. Nord? All right. Seeing none. Thank you so much, Ms. Nord. Leader Yin, I know that this was a topic that you were interested in. I wanted to see if you wanted to say anything about it ahead of public testimony.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, I think this is just something that I brought up due to it being frankly about the freedom to repair equipment that you actually own, right? So whether it's farm equipment or my printer or my car, more and more of the systems within those products are computerized to the point where we've seen new service models come out to basically create a recurring revenue stream where you have to depend on that company for that equipment for your entire life. And so, I think that goes away from the basic principle of independence that we have in our state of being able to use things for as long as we would like to keep using them, not because we have to pay someone a service model fee of however much per month just to keep it operating. And so I think that having this conversation is useful. I'm sure we will get pushback. There's a reason lots of these states saw these bills and then they saw them die. The question is, where do we balance the rights of these manufacturers who want to have this service model versus the rights of our consumers and voters in the state of Wyoming to use things that we own as we see fit?
Excellent. I appreciate that. No, that makes good sense. And this is one that to me also makes a lot of sense. I do understand that you end up getting some lobbying against, but I think it's an excellent thing for us to consider. Before we go to public comment, anyone else on the select committee want to make any statements or have any discussion? All right, seeing no hands, let's go to public comment at this time. Okay, who do we have joining? Is that
Mr. Chairman, online, we have Nathan Proctor
Great.
and Kyle Weems as well.
excellent? All right, is this Nathan here? All right. Nathan, welcome. Please introduce yourself to the committee, and I'll let you know that we have about a 1.5 second delay due to the technology from time gap between when I talk and you hear me. So it leads to some awkward moments on the communication side. But with that, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Nathan Proctor. I am the Senior Director of the Right to Repair campaign for the Public Interest Research Groups, or the PIRGs. We've been working across the country, our state affiliates, to support these reforms in dozens of states. I wasn't told how much time I would have, so if you could just give me a minute here, so a time limit here, so that I don't take more time than you're expecting.
Yeah, five minutes would be great if we can have 5 minutes worth of testimony, if that works for you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I mean, I could definitely talk your ear off about repair. I've written some 13 reports on this topic, but I think that I can boil it down to a pretty simple premise. Manufacturers have a pretty clear incentive to control the repair of the products that they make, and they have chosen to do so. So when the only person who can fix something is the manufacturer or their brand authorized partners, they control the cost of the repair and they can charge accordingly. They can also decide that they would rather you upgrade a product, and they can make that the only viable option. And they basically do this, different manufacturers of different equipment do this at different parts of the repair process. So, fixing something requires diagnosing the problem. So your phone or your tractor might know exactly why it's shutting off periodically, but it doesn't necessarily have to relay that information to you, the owner. You might need a special software tool to get that information, despite the fact that it's, recorded up by the sensors on your device. Other times they might just give you essentially what is a preview of the problem. Like when the check engine light goes on in your car knows a lot more about what the problem is than that check engine light. But the manufacturer could decide that they don't want to share the rest of that information with you, the owner. After diagnosis, you might need to swap out the part. Some manufacturers will sell you the parts. Back when I was a kid, almost every single part in our appliances was generic. You could get the switches you needed from anywhere. But now all those parts have software on them. And so that's controlled by copyright law. So you can't just, if the control board in the back of your television breaks and Sony decides not to sell you that control board, where else are you going to get it? They have exclusive ability to sell a part with the program software on it. And if they won't sell it to you, then you can't fix that television without going to them. And so after that part is installed, you might need to run a calibration or software authentication process to get it to finish its installation and function properly. Think of like a printer driver, right? You don't have to pay an Epson rep to drive out to your house and plug in a computer to install the printer driver so that you can print something. But that's exactly what farmers have to do right now. The firmware in farm equipment can only be installed by John Deere's Service Advisor software. The customer service advisor software that they sell does not make this available. It's impossible to do with that software. So, even if you've completely fixed the equipment and you put in the new part, there's a software, process that you can't do without this proprietary tool. And so our goal for Right to Repair is to say all the things that you already have available to fix the equipment, you need to make those available on fair and reasonable terms. And this is kind of increasingly necessary because of what's happening in the market with consolidation and the fact that these are now governed by IP laws instead of patent laws. Back in the day when it was just patents, you would have to file all the information necessary to fix equipment in your patent application. Anybody could go look at it. There's publicly available documentation. Now, because it's software, you can't get these parts anymore unless the manufacturer will play with it, or they can program it to require their intervention just to work. And so we need to do some reforms to kind of keep people's right to repair their products kind of in line with how it's been in history. I have a couple facts to share with you about the scale of this problem. We've done some research and found that if you were to repair instead of replace products in your own home, the average consumer would save about $382 per household per year. So that's $50 billion across the country. That's serious savings. And the other thing is that we estimate that farmers lose about $4 billion a year to just the restrictions on farm equipment. And I quickly want to talk about the question that was given to your legislative aid. The legislation is pretty simple. It just says, it defines a set of terms and says you have to make available the parts, tools, and information that you have created, intended for the repair of that equipment, to the owner of the product and to independent repair technicians. And then there's some terms of art around how to define fair and reasonable terms. And there's some exemptions to, that basically came from the manufacturers, kind of raising concerns that we just want the repair materials. That's the intent of the legislation. There is model legislation. And then there's also, as folks said, legislation that's passed in Colorado and Oregon, now Washington, California, Minnesota, New York. And then there's auto right to repair laws that have passed in Maine and Massachusetts as well. All right, with that, I'll wrap up my public testimony.
Thanks so much. I appreciate that public testimony, Mr. Proctor. One question that was asked is obviously, well, based on our understanding anyway, Colorado seems to be leading in this and they've had it on the books for a few years. Do you have direct knowledge of whether it's been effective in Colorado and has led to the outcomes that were desired?
I think that there's definite evidence that companies are removing some of the restrictions that they put in place to hinder repairs. I think that there's still like these laws are just coming into effect over the last 2 years, and so it's still a process of. I think some companies are a little bit ahead of others in terms of, in fact, some of the companies that most closely watch these bills, like for example, Apple, like they seem to have the most robust plan to comply with the law, despite the fact that they, were so vocal in opposition for so many years. Google has also kind of been a company that's clearly thought about the implications of right to repair laws and has made pretty obvious effort to comply. I think some of these other companies might be caught a little flat-footed, but we're definitely seeing improvement, and we haven't seen any enforcement actions that are necessary. There's been some warning letters that have gone out. But those have there was one that happened in California about a company called Hako, which makes electronics repair equipment. And they just after kind of going back and forth with the AG, they just released the materials that the people were looking for. And so to me, that's a great outcome. People get what they need to fix stuff, and there hasn't been anybody, dragged into court for it.
Great. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. All right. Any further questions for Mr. Proctor at this time? Further questions? Yep. Leader Yin, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Proctor, so you've witnessed this process in multiple states, and clearly in some states it didn't make it all the way through. And those seem to be the ones where it was tailored specifically to farm equipment. Do you know what has the process looked like for the ones that are more general, and then do they get narrowed by the time they make it to the end of the process? Have the ones that have been more general also included farm equipment, and what has that looked like?
Mr. Proctor?
I muted and then unmuted myself. So it's a good question. I think that, from the perspective of the Repair Coalition, and Kyle could also probably speak to this, we think that it's unfair and deceptive to sell somebody a product and then withhold the ability to repair and maintain that product. That violates some basic rights of ownership. So I don't think that there's any product that should be allowed to be sold unfairly or deceptively. So if I had my druthers, they'd all you'd be able to fix everything. You can imagine how difficult it is to pass a law when every single company that makes any piece of electronics gets to show up and lobby against it. It gets very chaotic. So we started to have a little bit more success when we narrowed the bills a little bit. And in fact, most of the bills that started a little bit more targeted kind of ended the process in a little bit more of a sensible place. And so that has been something that's happened more. And then the other question, specific to farm equipment, I would say that the consumer device companies have kind of become more acclimated to right to repair, and they're less, they have a couple things that they might push for in the legislation, but they're not really trying to completely stonewall it anymore, because there's been enough action that they're pretty comfortable with the four corners of it. They don't want it to conflict with the other states, but they might be pretty comfortable with the kind of how the law exists for most of those things. But farm equipment is still very much a contentious topic. And I have thoughts about why that might be, but that is certainly the conditions on the ground. Like if you were to put forward farm equipment bill in Wyoming, you would hear very strongly from the trade associations that represent both the manufacturers and the dealers.
Thank you so much, Mr. Proctor. Any follow-up, Leader? No. All right. Thank you very much. Any further questions for Mr. Proctor at this time? Thank you. We appreciate that. Ms. Aronow, I'm sorry that I didn't go to the room first. I actually just got swept up in Zoom land and forgot to come to the room first. So welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Absolutely no problem. Speaking of Zoom land, I believe I have a colleague online who's got his hand raised. So Chairman Rothfuss, members of the committee, Era Arano, representing Rocky Mountain Farmers Union. As this is not my typical committee, please indulge me a brief introduction for our organization. We're a grassroots farm organization that represents family farmers and ranchers in Wyoming, Colorado, and New Mexico. And we're founded to ensure that individuals in rural communities can compete effectively and fairly in the marketplace. Our policy positions are all member-driven, and our proposals originate in our local chapters and then are ratified at a state convention and an annual convention. We appreciated the discussion this morning about data privacy. We think that actually ties to this conversation. At this time, ag equipment manufacturers have the ability to collect data from the machines farmers and ranchers use, and we believe heavily in data privacy. Farmers and ranchers should be the ones to both own and control the data from their equipment. Specifically for right to repair, we support legislation that would allow farmers and independent mechanics access to the diagnostic software needed and other tools for repairing their equipment. We were part of developing the legislation that's been referred to in Colorado, and my colleague is online and he was part of that process, and I'd like to defer the rest of my time to him so he can answer those questions. You're welcome to ask me any questions. I will sit here, but I would recommend asking him instead.
But you'll defer, exactly. Thank you, Ms. Arano. We'll take that under advisement. And let's go to Mr. Garrett, I assume, is online.
Yeah, hi.
He is
everyone.
also sideways, though. So
Yeah, I can't.
if you have the
figure out what's
capacity,
going
okay.
Go ahead. I can
Well,
turn
it's
off the
interesting.
camera.
We
for
haven't
questions,
had
but-
anyone provide Zoom testimony sideways before, but I think we're willing.
Is that better to make
Oh,
it?
okay.
Yeah. So
He's gonna come
hi,
right back.
thank you.
Wait.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
There we go. All right. I tried turning it different ways and it won't do anything. So this is really interesting. But thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Tyler Guerin, the Director of Government Relations for Rocky Mountain Farmers Union. I work with ERA. We are a general farm organization that represents family farmers and ranchers through our grassroots policy process in Wyoming, Colorado, and New Mexico. At its essence, Right to Repair fundamentally deals with two things: competition and freedom of choice. We have seen an increased consolidation amongst equipment manufacturers and their respective dealers. This includes here in Wyoming, where just recently two of the largest manufacturers' dealers in the region consolidated last year. With the merger of 21st Century and Four Rivers Equipment, the farmers and ranchers in southeast Wyoming and the surrounding region have been left with little to no other option for an equipment dealer. Further consolidation leads to a continual decrease in competition, which ultimately leads to a higher prices for consumers. In this case, the consumers are the family farmers and ranchers that we represent, that you represent. The monopoly that has been created in the agricultural equipment sector does not allow for a free market due to the not allowing local independent repair providers and others to compete against massive multinational organizations. As tractors and other farming equipment become more and more technologically advanced to make the jobs of farmers and ranchers a little easier, one major aspect of this advancement has made the lives of many farmers and ranchers quite a bit more difficult, which is repairing that equipment when it breaks. Due to this undue hardship and mental strain that this has on the farmers and ranchers that we represent, RMFU and our many partners, including PIRG, support legislation on the right to repair, particularly for ag equipment. Right to repair legislation, simply put, would just give farmers and ranchers the freedom to choose either to repair their own equipment or to take it to a mechanic of their choice to be repaired, which it does include the authorized equipment dealers or independent repair providers. RMFU was intimately involved in the legislation 2 years ago that made Colorado the first state in the nation to provide farmers and ranchers the right to repair their own agricultural equipment. The crux of this law is in one paragraph. Again, the law is actually, some bills in Colorado are quite long, but this one's not too crazy long. And but the crux of the bill states, for the purpose of providing services for equipment in the state, an original equipment manufacturer shall, with a reasonable, fair and reasonable terms and cost, make available to an independent repair provider or owner of the manufacturer's equipment any documentation, parts, embedded software for agricultural equipment, firmware or tools, or with the authorization of the owner data that are intended for the use with the equipment or any part, including updates to the documentation, parts, embedded software, and so on. Ultimately, original equipment manufacturers and equipment dealers that do not comply with the law by providing farmers and ranchers or independent repair providers the tools and equipment necessary required under the law can be found in violation of an unfair or deceptive trade practice. I do want to clarify that while the Colorado law while Colorado has worked on right to repair for other technologies, as you've discussed, that the bill passed in 2023 was only for ag equipment. We have been trying to keep an eye on what's going on, but what we've seen is unfortunately quite a few of the manufacturers, authorized dealers, not quite complying with what they're supposed to. And so this is an ongoing thing. We are having conversations with the entities at the state that we need to. And as we go into the second growing season after the bill was enacted into law, we're hoping that we can get more information on some of this. I'll try to wrap up soon, but I do want to say a couple things. One is that there was an MOU signed by American Farm Bureau Federation and some of the equipment manufacturers back in 2023. Also, these don't really give teeth to what we need to actually do the right to repair for agricultural equipment. The main issue is that anyone can back out of these MOUs at any moment, and it only allows access to certain technologies that don't allow farmers and ranchers to complete the repair on their equipment for all repairs. I want to wrap up by saying that this process is not going to be easy if you do move forward with it. There will be a lot of misinformation. There will be confusion about what right to repair is, and we all must be willing to compromise, but not on what is important. And at the end of the day, we need to listen to our farmers and ranchers. I hope that you will either consider bringing forward agricultural right to repair legislation or broader right to repair legislation to provide the family farmers and ranchers in Wyoming the ability to choose how to fix their own equipment, either by fixing it themselves, bringing it to an independent repair provider, or if they choose, bringing it to the manufacturer's authorized repair provider. This is common sense legislation that provides agricultural producers the ability to get their equipment fixed in a timely manner so that they can continue to provide the food, fiber, and fuel for the people of Wyoming, the United States, and abroad. Thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions. And sorry for being sideways.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Garrett. No worries on being sideways. It happens sometimes. We appreciate your testimony. Any questions for Mr. Garrett at this time? Questions at this time? All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Let's move on. Ms. Arano, any other comments or you're good? Okay. Thank you so much. Let's see. I believe we have Kyle next. Is that accurate? Kyle, please introduce yourself to the committee. The floor is yours. And if you can keep testimony to around 5 minutes, it would be appreciated.
Hello, Mr. Chairman and committee. Thrilled to be joining you. I'm sorry I'm not sideways. I feel like I'm missing out on something here. I am the CEO and founder of iFixit. We're the free online repair guide for everything. We help lots of people all over the place learn how to fix everything from tractors to cell phones. Last year, we had people from 53,000 different IPs across Wyoming use iFixit to learn how to fix something. And before I dive into right to repair, I just wanted to comment on your AI discussion. I think you all are doing a great job, and I couldn't say more positive things about your AI experts that you brought in. So nice job. I haven't seen that work done at that level in other committees. I'm a software engineer and a recovering nerd, and so I'm going to kind of share where I come at right to repair a little bit from a software perspective. The challenge that we're having, the reason that this is happening in Colorado and elsewhere is because software is infecting all of the physical things that we have. And as a software engineer, I'm kind of the one doing it to all of our things. I write software, we put it on products. And so what it means is that the world of intellectual property, copyright, patents, it starts to get in the way of fixing things. So there was a federal lawsuit where Dorman's, which is an auto parts manufacturer, they were sued by General Motors for making a repair tool to repair a transmission, and GM was suing them for copyright infringement over selling an aftermarket transmission. That's the kind of challenges that we're dealing with, and so the framework that we're talking about, the way Nathan described it, is very simple. It says, hey, if a manufacturer has repair tools out there, whether they're software or physical tools, that your dealerships are using to fix things, you got to make those available to everybody else. That means that manufacturers have to design software products in such a way that they can be repaired by their owners. It's very, very easy to make products that can be repaired by anyone. I rented a Volvo yesterday. Just happened to be a Volvo, and on the screen that said, "Hey, we're going to schedule a service appointment for you at the dealership in so many miles." Like, these things have SIM cards in them. We're at a farm. A farmer showed us something. He says, "Watch this." He flipped open his seat. He yanked the SIM card from his tractor, and 5 minutes later, the dealership called him and said, "Hey, is there something wrong with your equipment?" Like, these things are connected. The dealers are watching. And so the question of whether we can maintain our products in the digital age is really a question that we have to decide now. We have a fork in the road where the default path is going to be where the folks who wrote the intellectual property laws are going to govern who gets to fix our things. And because the manufacturers created the product, they created the software, so they own the copyright to it, they get to dictate everything. John Deere sent a letter to all their dealers saying two things. One, they said that I was a liar, and two, they said that farmers don't actually own the software on their tractor, that they have an implied license to operate it for the lifetime of the vehicle. And so when you start saying, well, you don't actually own the thing that you bought, the farmers are saying, well, what the heck? And this kind of challenge that we're seeing impacts all products. From a fundamental policy perspective, you're asking about why are we tackling, why are the bills targeting farm equipment or cell phones? Why are they segmented? That's purely a political discussion. From a principled policy perspective, it's our stuff. We bought it. We should have access to the tools that we need to fix it. We should own the software that's on them and be able to modify them if we want to. If I have a chair that I bought and I want to paint it purple, I can do that. But if I have a software on a tractor that I bought, I can't necessarily make modifications to the software without threat of a lawsuit. So that's the kind of conversation that we need to have. The reason that it's been split out in different states is that it is simply a political path question. Can you take on Apple and John Deere at the same time? And we've achieved more success getting laws done where we have split it up and moved kind of one industry at a time. It also means that we're working with committees that have more kind of expertise on that particular technology. But if you look at the laws in Colorado that were passed, it's very, very similar between actually the first one they passed was for electric wheelchairs, and then the Consumer Electronics Law was just a modification of that. Same thing in California. These laws are designed to be pretty minimal and surgical. The reference legislation for the Digital Right to Repair Act is 8 pages. Most of that's definitions. These are not incredibly long laws. The goal is simply to kind of restore balance. And fundamentally, I think of this as a fairly libertarian policy. We're really just saying, hey, if you bought it, you should have access to the tools and parts that you need to maintain it. I will leave it there, but happy to dive into details or talk about any of what we've seen in other states. Oh, the other thing I would mention, so the John Deere has not complied with the Colorado law yet. So I haven't heard of a single farmer who has seen the benefit of the Colorado law being passed yet. And it's to the point where in January, the Federal Trade Commission, along with 4 states, filed a lawsuit against John Deere for refusing to provide the repair software. John Deere has announced that at some point later this year, they're going to make some kind of software available, but we hear that the pricing on that is going to be absolutely exorbitant. So we're not there yet for farmers, even though we've passed some laws. We haven't delivered relief for them. Where in the electronics world with smartphones, most of the smartphone manufacturers are starting to comply. So you can buy a battery from Apple or Samsung or Google, which you couldn't a few years ago, and that's in response to these bills that are passing.
Excellent, thanks. Is there going to be an action of any sort by Colorado then under their law against John Deere? Is that something that's being considered?
That's a great question. If I were them, I would.
Okay, we're not seeing it yet, though. All right. Any questions for Kyle? Go ahead, Representative Ian.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Mr. Weens. Appreciate you being here. I have one of your screwdriver sets. It's great. I love using it to fix my stuff, right? So the one question I have for you about the Colorado legislation, and I probably should have asked this of the Rocky Mountain folks, is that has John Deere stopped selling? So, I mean, I guess the one fear I'm sure people will bring up is Wyoming's a small wood market. If we pass legislation, are they just going to tap out of Wyoming and say no thanks? Have they tapped out of Colorado?
Kyle, thoughts?
No, they have not. We see them continue to sell. I mean, I think they're more interested in violating a statute and then dealing with that through legal means later than withdrawing from a market. We saw, Oregon passed the kind of most, I think, well-rounded electronics bill for cell phones, and you didn't see Apple or Microsoft say, "Oh, we're not going to sell cell phones in Oregon." They proceeded to comply with that. Also, I don't think this has been mentioned yet. Washington State has passed a bill that is very similar to Oregon's for consumer electronics, and the governor is expected to sign it into law on Monday.
Oh, great. Thanks for that update. Appreciate it. Any further questions? Further questions? Anyone online? Okay, seeing none. Thank you for your testimony. We're going to continue working on this, obviously, so we look forward to continuing cooperation with you on this and hope you'll stay involved.
Fantastic. Happy to be available as useful.
Great. All right. Do we have Mr. Brown online?
We do, Mr.
Excellent.
Chairman.
Can we bring in Mr. Brown?
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Brown, good to see you.
Likewise. Mr. Chairman, my name is John Brown, and nominally I'm here for myself, but I also wanted to let the committee know that I've had almost 28 years of experience in the IT field, and 3 of those years I had as a one-man service provider. So I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of background about me. What I'm here to talk to you about is right to repair, especially as it regards to electronic equipment like laptops, computers, etc. That's what I know, and that's what I'm here to talk about. Just wanted to first start off by saying that all what we're talking about, at least as far as I can tell, and what I'm going to be talking about is all these things are repairs made after the warranty expires. As far as I'm concerned, the manufacturers can put any kind of, whatever restriction they want, as long as the thing is under warranty. So if you break that seal on your laptop when trying to get into it, it's no longer under warranty. I'm fine with that. But this happens, after the warranty expires. So maybe you had a 1-year warranty, maybe you had a 3-year warranty, maybe you had something longer. This is important, as you'll see later. So imagine you have an Apple MacBook Pro laptop that you paid around, let's say $2,500 for, and then one day it stops charging the battery. The likely problem is a $12 chip on the system board called a charging chip. Under normal circumstances, you could either try to buy the chip online and replace the chip yourself, or you could take it to a computer repair shop where they would charge you the $12 for the new chip and probably 1 hour of their time to work on it. Now, without the right to repair, you probably won't be able to repair your laptop because you cannot get the charging chip, because Apple has made the chip manufacturer promise not to sell their chips to anyone else except to Apple. And any vendor who has agreed to be part of Apple's repair program. Apple stores would be a good example of this. They also have to be certified via a program Apple administers, And also, they would also have to have the tools that only Apple makes or has made available for them, and access to schematics and repair documentation that Apple has sold, or rather has sole control over. So Apple essentially controls all the angles of repairing, from getting the chips to the special tools needed to get into the machine, to providing schematics and manuals to repair it, and also regulating who can actually do it by having these certification programs. So Apple can charge a pretty penny to customers because they can justify it by saying, "Oh, we have special tools," or our technicians are certified, and all these other excuses that they might use to, like I said, just try to justify their exorbitantly high repair rates. It is possible that if you take your laptop to the Apple store, they won't want to replace the charging chip, but the entire system board instead. By the way, a system board for that MacBook Pro might cost around $1,500. So you might be out $1,500 plus the labor costs to replace it. Remember, this machine is no longer under warranty. And if you had a 3-year warranty, that $1,500 repair might not be worth what the machine is actually worth. So, it seems absolutely ridiculous sometimes to actually have it repaired, but when you could just buy the $12 chip and repair it yourself. Here's another thing that happens when you take your computer to the Apple store. One of the things that often happens with Apple repairs is that they also erase your data. So any pictures, documents, PDFs, etc., will just be gone when you pick up your repaired MacBook Pro. As you might be able to tell, the exorbitant price of repair might just prompt you to just throw your laptop away, like as I said, because the repair might cost more than what your machine is worth. Now, this is terribly wasteful when you consider that there are valuable metals and rare earth materials inside almost all electronics. Magnets can be made of nickel, metals like nickel, iron, and cobalt. Some of the rare earth materials are neodymium and boron. Electronics companies compound the problem of higher repair costs and e-waste further by planned obsolescence. This causes folks like you and me to buy more stuff faster than we normally would have to if we could just repair our electronics like the manufacturers could. So I guess really I just wanted to conclude my testimony by urging the committee and the legislature to adopt the right to repair legislation. Colorado sounds like it's something certainly to look at, and I understand there are at least 4 other states that have also passed right to repair. And I guess I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify. And if anybody has any questions, Mr. Chairman, I am more than happy to try to answer them.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Thank you for that testimony. Any questions for Mr. Brown? Mr. Co-Chairman, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Brown, for being here today. Do you think that by adopting a policy like this, that we would somehow stifle innovation and invention by removing the ability of a potential producer, inventor from making a genuine product that they want to?
Mr. Brown, response?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, I guess I'm really not sure what you mean by a product that they want to. Could you maybe clarify?
Mr. Co-Chairman?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would say such as, let's say you work with computers. So say they wanted to make a special one-piece screen that fit directly on the screen, or on the computer itself, and they wanted to make a product that exclusively operated with a one-piece screen, would this law then require that any laptop manufacturer has to then design their laptop in a way that has replaceable parts? I firmly believe that the whole is worth more than the sum of its parts. So are we able to, is this somehow restricting manufacturers in that way?
Mr. Brown.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Vice Chairman for the clarification. That's not something I've really thought about. What you're suggesting is that they create a product that is impossible to repair. It would seem to me that in that case, if it was just a one piece, a single one piece of equipment that doesn't have smaller parts to take apart, it would seem impossible for the manufacturer itself to repair the device. So, I would think that the manufacturer would then have to sell it, letting the people know that this is essentially a disposable device, and price it accordingly.
Thank you. Any follow-up, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Brown. No, I just see that this policy has far-reaching repercussions. It could be tailored specifically to digital products. It could be tailored to agricultural products. It could be tailored to disposable vape pens, for all we know. So just as we move forward with the conversation, that's something to think about. I am a huge fan of the right to repair, and I've talked about it before, but I just want to make sure we do it right.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chairman. Any further questions for Mr. Brown? Any further questions? Seeing none. Mr. Brown, thank you for joining us today, and thank you for your public testimony in support of this concept. I think we are going to probably find a path to move it forward, so we hope you'll continue to participate with us and join us for our committee meetings as we have some legislation to consider.
You're welcome, and thank you for allowing me to testify.
All right, Clarissa, do we have any other public testimony that you see online? Okay, any further public testimony in public? Seeing none. Public testimony is closed. Committee, what's your pleasure on this? Sounds like we're all pretty supportive of moving it forward. Leader Yin.
Mr. Chairman, I think I am interested in moving it forward. Maybe it'd be worthwhile to work with a couple of stakeholders and come up with a bill draft for our next meeting. Maybe work with any legislators on the committee that are interested in joining me.
Well, that sounds good to me. I think, I know that Senator Crago has experience with this from his time on the Ag Committee. So I'd ask Senator Crago to join Leader Yin. Anyone else interested in joining Leader Yin on this time? We can certainly have people email in. Senator Crago, I see you chiming in. Does that sound good to you?
Mr. Chairman, sounds great. Happy to help.
Excellent. All right. Well, Leader Yin, Senator Crago, if you could work with staff and then all our stakeholders that we've been hearing from, put together a good bill for us, we'll consider it the next legislative meeting of the Select Committee.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I agree that I think we do want to do it right. We don't want it to inhibit manufacturers from making the products that they want. But I think it was very clearly stated that the easiest way to approach this is to think about the type of repair tools that manufacturers provide to their own dealers and their own personal mechanics are the same types of repair tools that we should make available to everybody. I think that's a simple value.
Excellent. Sounds good. Any further discussion on this? All right. Seeing none, let's do that. So let's take a brief break. Let's try and do 5 minutes so that we can try and stay on schedule as far as getting done. We might end up a few minutes late, but not too bad. Let's break for 5 minutes and be back at, let's say 3:45. We'll be back, everyone. Thank you. And we're back. Final topic of the day is Federal Trade Commission click to cancel discussion. Once again, I think we have a good legislative overview to talk about this concept and then here's some discussion and public comment. Talise, the floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Talise Hansen, Staff Attorney also presenting a memo on the Federal Trade Commission's negative option rule. In November 2024, the Federal Trade Commission adopted the final version of rules for the negative option rule, also known as the click to cancel rule. This rule became effective January 14, 2025, with compliance by regulated entities required by May 14th, 2025, which was yesterday. So a brief overview of the rule. The rule applies to negative option features. A negative option feature is defined as a provision of a contract where the consumer's silence or failure to take affirmative action to reject a good or service or to cancel the agreement is interpreted by the negative option seller as acceptance or continuing acceptance of the offer. So some examples of this would be an automatic renewal, a continuity plan, which is where consumers agree in advance to receive periodic shipments of goods or provisions of services, and they continue to receive those shipments or goods and incur charges until they cancel that arrangement. A free-to-pay conversion or free-to-pay conversion, which is where you receive like a free trial or pay a small fee for a trial period, and after that free trial period ends or the small fee period trial ends, then the sellers automatically charge you a fee or a higher fee unless you cancel. And then a pre-notification negative option plan is where sellers ship merchandise automatically to subscribers and bill them for merchandise if they do not expressly reject the merchandise within a specific period of time. So the click to cancel rule provides 4 primary requirements. First, the rule prohibits misrepresentation of any material fact, not just facts pertaining to the negative option rule itself. Second, the rule requires disclosure of all material terms, including terms unrelated to the negative option feature. Third, the seller must obtain affirmative consent from the customer separate from the rest of the transaction. And fourth, the method of cancellation must be as easy as the method used to provide initial consent. So the rule applies broadly to any form of negative option programs in any media, including interactive electronic media, telephone, print, and in-person transactions. And it applies to not only consumer transactions, but also business transactions. And various industry groups in the Chamber of Commerce have filed 4 separate legal challenges to this rule that was consolidated in the Court of Appeals for the 8th Circuit. These groups argued that the Federal Trade Commission lacked authority to issue the rule. The Federal Trade Commission violated procedural requirements. The rule is arbitrary and capricious, and the rule violates the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. The litigation in that case is still ongoing, and I'll stand for any questions.
Excellent. Thanks for that background. Questions for Ms. Hansen? Any questions at this time? Yep. Leader Yin.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Ms. Hansen, I mean, I know that you didn't write this memo, so it's kind of hard for me to ask you some questions. So if you don't know, that's quite all right. Do you know, has the FTC made any moves to change the rule at all? And what is the timeline for the court case, if you do know?
Ms. Hansen.
Representative Yin, Mr. Chairman. I do believe that oral arguments are still pending in that case. And I don't know if they've been scheduled yet, but I know that they're pending scheduling. About the rule, I'm not quite sure if the FTC has taken any action. It didn't appear so, but I'm not 100%.
Go ahead, Leader Yin.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And just because you have the compliance date as of yesterday, did the court issue any stay or should companies be in compliance by now?
Good question. Elise?
Representative Yin, Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure if the court has issued a stay yet.
Yeah, I wonder if they're supposed to be complying. Let's try and cancel something. Hop online and see. Any further questions? Any follow-up? And this is obviously this is a topic we wanted to look into and understand if there's any action that we should take, what that might look like. This is obviously strong consumer protection that prevents, I think, well, I guess I would just say this. I'll be surprised if everyone in this room hasn't ended up subscribed to something they didn't intend to be paying for at one point or another at this point in life. I know I've paid for a lot of monthly payments on things, and I'm like, when did I start doing that? And how did I possibly land it? So it's good for us to be understanding this. Thank you, Ms. Hanson. Appreciate it. Any further questions or discussion before we go to public comment? We've got a couple of people that look like they've got some background in this space that we can hear from the public. Go ahead, Leader Yin.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And because, I think I am the one that brought this topic up. I think, I mean, I understand probably where some of these service providers are coming from with some of these requirements. It's bigger than just click to cancel, right? So click to cancel is one part of it. But I think the memo provides a good summary of the 4 different requirements. Maybe it's not something where we consider all of those requirements, but it could be something where we consider taking a stab at one of them.
Yeah, that sounds good. And honestly, just that concept, which is the 4th requirement, simple cancellation requirement, that the method of cancellation must be as easy as the method used to provide consent, would be spectacular if that were true in real life all the time. Somehow you can sign up instantaneously for a lot of services, and the technology exists for a one-click solution that builds your credit card. And yet, hours of searching cannot get you a solution to how to undo what you got yourself into. And I've experienced that firsthand more times than I can count. So not just me, but thanks to my children as well. They've done a spectacular job of opting into things that I wish they hadn't. With that, let's look to our public comment. All right, we've got 2 gentlemen joining us by Zoom. Hopefully we have John Braille. Let's have John, welcome. Please introduce yourself to the committee, and the floor is yours. I'll just note quickly that we've got about a 1.5 second lag time in speaking that causes a little bit of confusion as we're talking back and forth, so be aware of that. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Rothfuss, Chairman Singh, and members of the committee. My name is John Brayo, and I serve as Vice President of Public Policy, Telecommunications, and Fraud at the National Consumers League. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. At NCL, we've long worked to protect consumers from unfair and deceptive business practices. One issue of growing concern to us is negative option marketing, where companies interpret a consumer's silence as agreement to continue being charged for a service. These practices are especially prevalent when it comes to subscriptions and free trials. The average American now spends over $1,000 a year on subscriptions, things like streaming services, retail memberships, cloud storage, and more. But many consumers pay for subscriptions they no longer use or never intended to keep. A 2022 study found that 42% of consumers forgot they were still being charged for a service. And on average, they underestimated their subscription spending by $133 a month. These problems are driven by business tactics that make it easy to sign up, but hard to cancel. Let me highlight some of the most harmful ones. First, hidden or unclear enrollment terms, especially with free trials. Many consumers are unwittingly enrolled in subscriptions because the material terms, such as the recurring nature of charges, the cost or cancellation deadlines, are not clearly and conspicuously disclosed. This is particularly prevalent with free trial conversion offers, where consumers provide credit card information upfront, but the conversion to a paid subscription upon the trial's end is hidden in fine print or buried within lengthy contracts. Second, excessively difficult or impossible cancellation procedures. Consumers frequently encounter unnecessary obstacles and burdensome procedures when attempting to cancel. These can include requiring cancellation methods that are much harder than signing up, burdensome phone cancellations that involve long hold times or calls that are lengthier or more burdensome than the sign-up call, and confusing online cancellation paths. The third way they do this is through a failure to provide reminders leading to unwanted charges. Without clear reminders of upcoming charges or renewal deadlines, consumers often forget about subscriptions, especially if they are not actively using the service. Some consumers only discover these charges months later when reviewing bank statements. And finally, deceptive misrepresentations and omissions. Sellers may make material misrepresentations or omit key facts about the negative option feature or the underlying product. This includes lying about the cost, the recurring nature of the charges, cancellation deadlines, or refund rights. Disclosures, even if present, may be buried in fine print or given only after charges have begun. Tactics like these cost consumers over $1 billion annually. They also hurt honest businesses by eroding trust in digital commerce. That's why we strongly support the FTC's newly finalized negative option rule, also known as click to cancel. The rule, which took effect this January and would have required compliance this month, but has since been extended to July, is a major step forward. It ensures mandatory disclosures where sellers must clearly and conspicuously disclose all material terms, including the cost, frequency, and charges, their recurring nature, the deadlines to cancel, and how to cancel. These disclosures must appear immediately adjacent to where the consumer consents to the negative option feature. Second, the rule requires express informed consent. Sellers must obtain the consumer's unambiguously affirmative consent to the negative option feature separately from any other part of the transaction before charging them. And finally, the rule requires simple cancellation. Sellers must provide a simple mechanism for consumers to cancel and immediately stop recurring charges. This mechanism must be at least as easy to use as the method the consumer used to sign up and available through the same medium. This directly addresses the Roach Motel scenario where getting in is easy, but getting out is difficult. The rule clarifies that if a consumer signed up online, they should be able to cancel online without having to interact with a live representative or chatbot. It's important to note that the FTC's rule doesn't ban subscription services. It just ensures that they're fair and transparent. And crucially, it does not override state laws, meaning Wyoming is free to build on this federal baseline with even stronger protections. As this committee considers policy for the blockchain and digital innovation sectors, I urge you to prioritize consumer protection as a foundation for trust. Clear rules don't stifle innovation. They encourage adoption by giving consumers the confidence to participate. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that, Mr. Breo. Any questions for Mr. Breo at this time? All right. So one thing that I did note was that an extension until July. Can you provide a little context of how that extension took place? Our brief which was written about a month ago, had a May 15th activation date, or 14th, excuse me, so yesterday. And you noted that it would be extended until July. Was that a court decision, or was that an FTC decision? Why was it extended until July?
No, sir. It was the FTC decision to extend the deadline. I believe the vote was 3-0. The court case you're speaking about in the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals, to my knowledge, that has not been ruled on. I believe back in January, there was a request for an administrative stay of the rule, but I don't believe the court granted that administrative stay, and they have not yet ruled on that case. So it is the FTC's decision here that's holding up the effective date of the rule.
Excellent. Thank you. One other question I have is, have any other states implemented this through their own state action that you're aware of? And if so, has that been effective, or is this FTC initiative really kind of the key puzzle piece that's in play?
There are 17 states plus the District of Columbia that have some sort of click to cancel or automatic renewal laws that apply here. In almost every state, the list contains types of businesses that were exempt from the law. That can include businesses like banks, insurance companies, alarm systems, utilities. Most of those laws have good faith exceptions in the law for certain sellers. And requirements for those exceptions vary by state. There is, in our review of those laws, there was often some kind of ambiguity regarding definition of terms, like an easy mechanism to cancel, or affirmative consent, or a material change, and most notably, what is clear and conspicuous. But almost all the state laws we looked at contained the basic elements of the FTC rule. So a mandatory disclosure of renewal, informed affirmative consent from the consumer, a simple cancellation process or mechanism, and notification of material changes to a contract. However, many of them failed to specifically mention misrepresentation of contract information.
Thank you. Would you point to any particular state as having what you consider to be the best law in class?
Well, here at the National Consumers League, we advocated strongly for the District of Columbia's bill on automatically renewing contracts as one that, that's the one I'm most familiar with, and I think it's a very strong law.
Excellent. That's helpful. Thanks. Any further questions for Mr. Braille? All right. Seeing none, we appreciate your testimony and joining us by Zoom today. With that, let's go to Mr. Levine. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Chairman Rothfuss, Chairman Singh, and members of the committee. My name is Sam Levine, and I serve as a senior fellow at Berkeley Law's Center for Consumer Law and Economic Justice. Until earlier this year, I directed the FTC's Bureau of Consumer Protection, where I led the development of the federal click-to-cancel rule. Before I get into my prepared remarks, I just wanted to briefly address some of the questions that have been raised that John, I think, answered most of them. It's true, industry sought a stay of the implementation. The Eighth Circuit panel in the Eighth Circuit denied that stay in January, so the rule was slated to take effect last week. However, last week, the commission voted. They didn't really provide reasons for this. They said companies needed more time. The commission voted to extend the compliance deadline to July, so I think it's going to be July 14th. I think it was also asked whether the new administration has changed the rule. The answer to that is no. In fact, when the commission extended the compliance deadline to July, they expressly stated that they are prepared to enforce the rule in full or in whole come July. And the last question, just about 2 hours ago, maybe knowing that this hearing would take place, the Eighth Circuit, where this challenge is being heard, scheduled oral argument for June 10th. So now let me get into some of the my prepared remarks. So you've already heard a great overview of the rule's key requirements.
Please proceed.
Why this issue? Sorry, go ahead. Oh, that might have been the delay.
I just said, please proceed.
Oh, thank you. You've already heard a great overview of the rule's key requirements and why this issue is so important to consumers' pocketbooks. I want to focus instead on what Wyoming can do to ensure your citizens are not wasting their time and money on unwanted subscriptions. The federal click-to-cancel rule is a vital first step, but it's a floor. It's not a ceiling. Given the scope of this problem, as John described it, the limits of federal enforcement, and the direct impacts on the wallets of Wyoming consumers, I would respectfully urge you to consider going further to protect consumers' time and money. Let me explain why I think state action is necessary in spite of the FTC rule. First, the federal rule is not going to eliminate people getting trapped in subscriptions. With limited resources, the FTC cannot investigate or sue every company that violates the law. A Wyoming law could empower state authorities and individual consumers to act swiftly and directly to provide an additional layer of protection and accountability. Second, there are hurdles to enforcement of the federal rule. As I mentioned, it was slated to take effect yesterday, but it's now being extended to July. And at the same time, a number of industry groups have filed suit to block implementation. The Trump administration is defending the rule vigorously. They filed a very strong brief earlier this year, and I'm confident that the government's going to win. However, ongoing litigation could further delay or limit enforcement of the rule. In my view, Wyoming consumers should not have to wait on Washington, D.C. to assert their basic rights to cancel a subscription they don't want. And this legislature has broad authority to act and can pass a durable rule that protects Wyoming consumers more quickly and more effectively. That brings me to the final reason I think the state should act to complement the FTC rule. Wyoming could pass additional measures to protect citizens' wallets, and I would highlight 3 in particular. First, Wyoming can ensure its citizens get reminders before they get charged. A bipartisan coalition of attorneys general, along with consumer law experts, including Professor Dee Pridgen of the University of Wyoming, argued to the FTC that annual reminders were insufficient, given how many consumers face unexpected charges when they forget about subscriptions they have. And they urged more regular reminders, for example, when consumers get charged or when subscriptions get renewed. But the FTC declined to implement that provision. I can talk about why if you're interested. State legislation can solve for this issue by requiring reminders each time a consumer is charged or before a subscription is automatically renewed, ensuring that no Wyoming consumer faces surprise charges. The second change that I think Wyoming could make to strengthen these protections for Wyoming consumers is ensuring that the protections extend across all markets in the state. The FTC's authority generally does not extend to certain industries like common carriers, banks, and nonprofits. But these sectors, as you all know, are far from immune to abusive subscription practices. Wyoming can make it crystal clear. If you bill Wyoming residents on a recurring basis, you must make cancellation as easy as enrollment, no exceptions. This will prevent bad actors from trying to exploit coverage grabs. The final thing I think Wyoming can do is to help ensure vigorous enforcement and broad compliance. Once the federal rule takes effect, the FTC can seek refunds for consumers who've been wrongly billed, but it can't actually get penalties against those who violate the law without a cumbersome process that they often don't pursue. In addition, the federal rule does not include a private cause of action. Wyoming can close these enforcement gaps by giving injured consumers the right to sue and by giving the Wyoming Attorney General the authority to seek civil penalties and injunctive relief when companies violate the law. These tools would deter misconduct and provide real consequences for bad actors who target Wyoming consumers. Let me conclude by saying that the FTC's rule, when it takes effect, which I'm hopeful it will, lays a strong foundation, but there's much Wyoming can do to ensure its citizens enjoy the strongest protections in America. Importantly, and John alluded to this initiative would protect Wyoming small businesses as well, both those who offer subscriptions honestly, who will now be able to compete on a level playing field, and the many businesses who rely on subscriptions, who will be able to avoid unwanted charges. I truly believe that this is a win-win policy initiative. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and I welcome your questions and stand ready to support your efforts in any way to draft strong, effective legislation that puts Wyoming consumers first. Thanks very much.
Mr. Levine, thank you so much for that testimony. Do you have any state in mind that has a law that you feel is strong and accomplishes the 3 points that you laid out, as well as the spirit of the FTC rule? Is there any state that seems to be doing it well?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. California has an auto renewal law. I believe they have amendments that are taking effect this summer that includes simple cancellation requirements. It was alluded to earlier. To me, the most important part of this law is simple cancellation. John mentioned about a third of the states in the country have these laws. Most of them do not have simple cancellation provisions. If you look at California's law, it does. New York is currently considering a law that does, and there are a couple other states as well, which we can get back to you on.
So honestly, a law that did simple cancellation and what you pointed out as the reminder prior to charge, so a pre-charge reminder that incorporated a simple cancellation, probably solves this problem 99% of the time by the sound of it. Would that be fair?
Well, I think there are other provisions that are important. For example, companies might lie about the products they're selling. You have companies marketing products on a subscription basis, and then they don't meet, they don't line up to how the products are being advertised. There are other provisions just to make sure companies don't lie to people. I think that's an important backstop. For example, a company could lie to people about how to cancel a subscription. You want to make sure that, for example, the Wyoming Attorney General could take action against that. But I think you're absolutely right. On the whole, the most important parts of this initiative are making sure people can cancel simply and giving people reminders, which makes it all the simpler. I'll just add briefly, if I may, the reason the FTC did not add a reminder requirement is not because we didn't think it was worthwhile. And I'm not speaking for the FTC, but I was involved in this process. I'm speaking for myself, though. What the FTC said is that they don't yet have the FTC needs to show that it would be unlawful to not offer reminders. And the FTC didn't feel it had enough evidence to go that far. But of course, you as legislators don't need to kind of cabin yourselves to existing law. You could actually require that companies remind consumers and make it really easy to click a button and cancel.
Right, excellent. And a good point. Is there any state that has achieved a private right of action in any of their legislation that you know about?
I think the way it works in many states is that I don't know how many of them have direct private rights of action. John can weigh in if he does, but many states allow consumers there's a private right of action for the general consumer protection law, the law prohibiting unfair deceptive practices. What many states say is that a violation of any state law is an unfair deceptive practice. So there's kind of a backdoor private right of action in a lot of these states.
That's how ours would probably work if we wrote it that way within the statute. There's a private right of action included in the broader act. So just tapping that would be appropriate. Thank you. Thank you. That's useful. Any questions, Select Committee? Anyone have any questions? Go ahead, Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry, what was your last name?
Levine.
Mr. Levine. Thank you for being here today. I am concerned, what would be the unintended consequences of passing something like this? So for example, would we see something like steep early termination fees taking place where businesses would then just change the model somehow to get the cash at the end of the day?
Mr. Levine, thoughts?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I want to be sure to address the early termination fee, but here's what businesses have said, and I'll try to relay it accurately what the unintended consequences are. One, they have said it's very expensive to comply and sort of make the technical fixes for it to be easy for people to cancel. Respectfully, I do not credit that. As one of you mentioned, businesses are remarkably good at making it easy to sign up. I've logged onto services and signed up for a subscription in under a minute. I don't even know what hit me. The notion that they can't use that same technology to make cancellation simple, I don't find very credible. These are really sophisticated companies. The second argument we've heard is that, the companies just won't offer subscriptions if they have to follow this. If you're offering subscriptions and you're only making money because you're making it hard for people to cancel, you shouldn't be offering subscriptions. At the end of the day, this rule makes it easier. I think it makes it better for honest companies that offer subscriptions. Speaking for myself, I'm increasingly wary of signing up for subscriptions because I don't want to be stuck in them. I think if if consumers of Wyoming had confidence they could cancel easily, they'd be more willing to sign up, and honest companies would make a lot more money. In terms of early termination fees, it's a really good question. The FTC actually sued Adobe for doing just that, for hitting people with early termination fees. I think this is why I said earlier, it is important to make sure companies can't lie to people about subscriptions. What happens in many cases is that companies won't be clear with people up front that there are early termination fees. So maybe someone thinks they're signing up for a month to month, but it's actually a 1-year contract. So one of the things the FTC rule did is said you have to be upfront about the terms of the subscription. So I actually think this rule would, companies can still decide to impose fees. The FTC is not engaged in price regulation, but if they're imposing fees, they need to make sure consumers know that when they are signing up, and consumers then can make an informed decision and avoid those fees.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Levine. Leader Yin, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Mr. Levine. So I'm looking at Idaho's version that they did it through a committee bill, and it passed in 22. It seems to be a pretty simple bill. I'm curious on what your thoughts on Idaho's version and whether it makes a good starting point for us. And it does have the violation of their Consumer Protection Act, which I assume gives them a civil right of action.
Go ahead.
So I don't recall if Idaho has a simple cancellation requirement. I know that they do require clear and conspicuous disclosures, which is very important. We talked about early termination fees; those should be disclosed. I know that they require advance notice of renewal, which is really great. That's letting people know in advance. And I don't know if John recalls this, but to the extent Idaho does not include a simple cancellation requirement, I think probably that would be an important addition.
Weighing in on this, what I understand about
Sorry.
Sorry, just to
Mr.
weigh in
Chairman,
on.
I was just asking if Mr. Breyer could continue.
I apologize, Mr. Chairman. Just to respond to Mr. Levine's question about Idaho, what I believe the Idaho law requires is clear information about the cancellation policy, about pricing and the methods of cancellation, and that it provides an easy mechanism to cancel. Where I believe it does not, where it could be improved is that while it does require clear and conspicuous disclosures regarding terms of automatic renewal, the term clear and conspicuous is not clearly defined.
Great follow-up. Okay. Mr. Levine, any follow-up yourself?
No, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you about this today.
Excellent. Any further questions, Select Committee? Seeing none, anyone online have their hand up? Okay. Well, thank you for that testimony. We appreciate that, Mr. Levine. And I think we're probably going to end up proceeding on this also and doing some further investigations. So we hope, Mr. Breyo, Mr. Levine, that you'll work with us on that as we think through these ideas and see if we can put together some good legislation. Is there any further public testimony, Ms. Norton? Okay, any public testimony in the room? Seeing none. Public testimony is closed. All right, committee, what's your pleasure on this? Leader Yin, thoughts?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I would like to bring a bill draft forward where we can debate the finer details of what it would look like, but happy to base something on somewhere that is existing so we can just have consistency for companies, but also make sure that we have the protections needed for people in Wyoming.
Sounds good. Mr. Filer, you willing to join in on that? Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a question for Leader Yin. So what is the scope of the services that you're looking at here? I mean, you could be going with like a Spotify subscription. It could go all the way to like a gym membership. Does it extend all the way to a health insurance plan? I don't know. What are you thinking here?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure we should limit it. I think if a service provider, regardless of the service, whether it's an insurance company, insurance company especially, you're paying thousands of dollars a year. People should be reminded, but also be able to switch, right? I think that's essential to the competition within the industry as well. And without that competition, the more lock-in a provider can do with a deceptive trade practice, the more that they can charge you.
Mr. Co-Chairman, follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, Mr. Leader, I hope you lock in and get this done. So.
All right. Without objection, we'll proceed to have Representative Yin and Representative Filer work with stakeholders to develop a bill draft related to the Federal Trade Commission's click to cancel discussion, and look forward to that at the next meeting. All right, excellent. So with that, we're closed on our final discussion point, and we are up to committee directives. Let's start with kind of an overview, Talise, of what your expectations and your needs are, and kind of run through what we've done in the last couple of days to see if there's any more discussion or anything that you need from us.
Yep. Mr. Chairman, I'll just go through what you guys have done. So there was discussion about working with UW on potentially some bill drafts, one on cybersecurity modernization bill with existing statutes. Possibly they talked about possibly having something with some AI legislation that they might have some language for. Second was to draft a bill regarding interruptible service tariffs as a condition of operating a certificate territory. Draft a bill on digital asset taxonomy, draft a bill on Wyoming Stable Token Act amendments, write a letter to the Wyoming Stable Token Commission on lawful purpose and the use of court documents, creating an asset-backed token working group that you guys sponsored, 26 LSO 11 Secretary of State expedited filings for the next session. You continued the commercial registered agent / cryptographic signatures working group. You created a DUNA working group to work on a DUNA amendments bill draft. You continued 26 LSO 9, the bill to change the name of the committee for a future meeting, either the next meeting or the last meeting. You combined 26 LSO 13 and 26 LSO 14 into one bill on state banks and speedy conversions to work with some amendments with the banking division. You created a speedy working group to work on a bill with certificate of authority issues and the repeal of 13-12-106. You want to send a copy of the final version of California's AI bill, Senate Bill 813, once that is complete. You created a rights to repair working group to work on legislation for that, and you created a click to cancel working group.
All right, so we're busy. That's pretty clear. We definitely don't need to pick up work ahead of the next meeting. Talise, do you have any questions for us? Is there anything that's unclear? A lot of it we can obviously follow up on for the working groups and some of the drafting. We'll need to do some additional work, but anything you need from us right now?
Mr. Chairman, I don't think anything right now, just we'll have to get the working groups moving since July will be coming up quickly.
Yeah.
So.
And Talisa, it's my understanding that the letter that we discussed earlier on about sort of the terms and conditions related to the Wyoming Stable Token, it would be beneficial to have that in the very near future. So if we can get a short draft on that, sort of ASAP for a quick circulation, I think that would be beneficial and would help the director to benefit from that letter. But otherwise, yeah, we need to start those working groups soon. And I guess I would ask everyone that's serving on working groups, and that's a lot of folks. And if you're not on a working group and want to be on one, then contact whoever's leading that working group, and I'm sure they'd love to have you. But I'd encourage all the members to start scheduling those working group meetings really, like maybe not next week, but the following week. Try to get a first meeting. If we want to turn around by July, we'll need to do that. And then honestly, getting an early sense, if we don't feel like we're going to have sufficient product for the July meeting, it's okay, right? Then we cancel the July meeting, we target the September meeting, and then we can have a third meeting, which would be in November or December. And that's just fine since we have a late start to the session of February. That doesn't screw anything up. But we would need to know we were going to utilize that strategy in the pretty near future. So we'll check back in on that. Anything else? Mr. Co-Chairman, anything that we're missing here?
Mr. Chairman, we tossed around the idea of a working group on artificial agents, but we can pursue that independently. We can there wasn't a particular piece of legislation that was going to come out of that.
Right.
It was more of a research specialization. I was interested in that. That does seem very interesting to me. But there was no official action.
Well, we certainly can proceed with that. And I mean, and Mr. Co-Chairman, if you want to dig into that also, and you know, DAZA is always a great partner on topics like that to try and explore the space, figure out what experts are out there, and see if there's anything that we need to take action on. And it might just be to get more information at another meeting. That's going to be fine too. So it's not a bad idea to explore it. Representative Filer, anything that you see? We good? All right. Representative Yin, anything? All good. Our folks online, select committee, any final thoughts or comments? We have Mr. Pope. Let's bring in Mr. Pope. I see your hand. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman Rothfuss. The only other thing that I had was the IRS letter to Chris Land, and I forwarded a draft of that to you earlier on today, but that I did not hear as part of the list, so I wanted to just keep that on everyone's radar.
Good point. Yep. Let's make sure that that's on the list and that we're moving forward with our letter to the IRS, coordinating with the select committee and with Mr. Land to coordinate that discussion with the IRS. I do think that's important to weigh in on that. So let's keep track of that. And I did see the note that it was sent over, but I certainly haven't looked at it, Mr. Pope, to take a look at the letter draft. My apologies. But let's check in with Mr. Land on that and see if there's any sensitivity to a timeline, or if we should just mark it up, get a good letter together, and then send it off.
Happy to check with him, and I appreciate your consideration.
Excellent. Subcommittee, any other members online? Any final thoughts or comments before we adjourn? No further hands, no further comments. All right. Ms. Nord, when is our next meeting again? Remind us.
Mr. Chairman, our next meeting is July 10th in Casper.
July 10th in Casper. Hope to see everyone there. And again, if we have an appropriate work product at that time, then we'll go forward with that. But we do reserve the right to cancel that one and go to the September meeting. So honestly, members, give it some thought, and we'll see what the work product looks like, and whether Talise and Clarissa feel like they've got enough time to turn things around for that meeting. It wouldn't be a problem for us to move a meeting into December, for example, or even January, if that gets us a better work product. All right. With no further comments, thanks, everyone. Great first meeting. Look forward to working with all of you in the interim, and certainly enjoyed the time in Jackson. We are adjourned.